All right, good evening, everyone. I'm Karen Hoskin, the Chair of the Housing Advisory Board. Welcome to our monthly meeting. Today is January 28th, 2026. We'll start with the roll call. Lauren Shevitz. Here. Michael Lucchese.
Here.
Philip Ogren.
Here.
And Chip Hennessy, hopefully will be arriving soon. Also want to welcome some panel guests that we have here: Andy Minden, Brian Bowen, Holly Hendrickson, and then Tim Dolan is zooming in, and I believe that Kristen Heiser will be zooming in. Oh, she said hi. Are zooming in as well. So as far as our agenda tonight, we'll do an approval of the minutes. We'll have time for public participation. Matters from the board tonight, we have a neuro-inclusive housing panel with some really great guests lined up. Yes, it is. We'll talk about the HAB member quarterly update and the HAB work review. We'll have a few minutes for matters from staff. Any final suggestions or thoughts, and then we'll adjourn like 8 o'clock tonight or shortly after. And Chip Hennessy is here.
Present.
Present, thank you. Okay, so approval of the minutes from our November 19th, 2025. I almost caught that meeting. Any comments or corrections that need to be made? Motion approval.
Second.
Awesome. All in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? Great. Motion approved. Participation. Excuse me, Tiffany, do we have anybody?
There's several members of the public already.
Okay, great. Jay, do you want to do our?
Raise their hands if they want to speak. Is this how the advisor?
It
Yeah.
is.
I'm next, Lord, public comment.
Oh, great. Good timing.
I guess I'm too.
Sure. Yes.
All right, so before we start public comment, I'm just going to go over some of the rules. We do this. All right, so the city has engaged with community members to co-create a vision for productive, meaningful, and inclusive civic conversations. Support the physical and emotional safety of all. If you would like more information, you can go to the website and read about the entire community engagement process that was to develop that. Following are examples of rules of decorum found in the Boulder Revised Code. These will be upheld by our chair at the meeting. All remarks and testimony shall be limited to matters related to city business, please. No participant shall make threats or use other forms of intimidation, obscenity, racial epithets, and other speech and behavior that disrupts or otherwise impedes are prohibited. And participants are required to use their name they are commonly known by, and individuals must display that before being allowed to speak online. And currently, only audio testimony is permitted for online participants. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Jay.
Did you want to hear the in-person?
Yeah, is that okay?
Oh, sure. You're on. Yeah, I'm Max Lord. You may have heard or met me before. I'm a local builder in town, and I was on KGMU this morning speaking about commercial vacancy, something I've taken quite an interest in. I've spoken to a lot of the landowners. I've spoken to a lot of the builders, et cetera, and I've even been working with some of the housing workers in Sundance. So slightly qualified. I think I was invited here by Stephen Hennessy, I believe, who I've only met by email. But if I may, if you wanted my advice about how the vacant commercial can be used in housing, just from the lens of a builder, it's quite difficult to do, particularly downtown. You have issues with windows and you have issues with utilities. But that being said, if we change legislation on boarding houses and basically think dormitory style rooms, and reformat those, I think that we could take a squeeze off of the housing market in the face of Sundance. And that I would say is a more relevant goal than switching them into, say, apartments. You know, I think that right now there's a big movement towards helping homeowners rent out during Sundance. But a more pressing issue to me as a renter would be renters' ability to sublet during Sundance. And we don't have many provisions right now that it would allow for that. But if you wanted to just make housing more affordable for the average renter, them being able to skip town for 2 weeks and make $3,000-$4,000, that actually subsidizes their rent in a very meaningful way. So just like I said, as a builder and as a renter, that would be my humble advice. Yeah. Any questions?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for your comments.
I actually have a question. Did you have some examples of how you would repurpose that commercial space?
Yeah, so I'm looking at one space right now that's above the Sundown Saloon and Japango Sushi. And I think that a kind of clever way to do it would be, like I said, you have like a dormitory style room along the window, and then you have a common space that's used for more events. And it's specifically targeted more towards like a digital nomad than, say, a luxury hotel, because that's a huge market that we're missing right now. And people are like, how are we going to get these office workers back downtown? And I'm 32 and I'm telling you, they're never going back. Like they gotta die before you get them back in an office. So, which is good for them. So I'm like, then how are we going to get the people that are working remotely downtown so that they're supporting the businesses, et cetera? And I think boarding houses would be a really good idea to handle that. We don't have great mechanisms within our current code to allow for that. And I would like to see the city moving towards that. So that handles a bunch of issues. Also, if you wanted to, when we're talking about kind of the tier of homelessness that is very at risk before they've, say, fallen into addiction, et cetera, I think living in a car, being able to give a voucher to a boarding house is a lot more realistic than giving a voucher to the St. Julian or, the Limelight. And a lot of people in that situation would appreciate a dormitory style bedroom, so we don't have that almost anywhere in town, but there are a lot of people that market would work for. And that's you don't need. So luxury student housing, say, has what? You have 4 bedrooms, you're going to have 4 baths because that's what they're willing to pay for. But something like this could have, say 8 beds, but really it's only 1 shared shower. And I mean, that's not ideal for long-term living situation. But if you're just, say, spending the night in town, you're say a climber and you're living in your van, but you want a place to take a shower and meet some people, then they're in town. And once again, this takes a little bit of the squeeze off of the short-term licenses, because I would like to see that go away as quick as possible. I think that the short-term festival licensing is going to do devastating effects on the rental market.
Thank you.
Yeah, and
Thank you very much.
yeah, and I'm probably going to dip because I'm super busy. But if anybody, I just thought I'd swing by in person. And anybody who wants to reach out to me, they can. My email's at Maxwell. That's super easy to find.
Your attention.
Yeah, can I ask a follow-up? So I thought maybe you were talking about 3 things, but maybe 2 different things. With the helping out with Sundance crowd, perhaps what you're talking about is like a hostel type service where people can stay for a night or 2 or a week or 2, and then it's very much a short-term thing. But I think that is very separate from like SROs in general, where you're actually just like trying to provide the bottom rung of the housing ladder in a dormitory style format.
Yeah, I'd say that, I'm oftentimes guilty of talking about 3 different things that I kind of view as the same at once. And I am kind of getting at that it's kind of a way that you can leverage the economy of Sundance or the digital nomad community that in a kind of roundabout way can help people that are at risk in homelessness. That you've provided a type of short-term housing to those most at risk by kind of capitalizing on people that have a little bit more cash flow. So it's a little bit of both.
Okay.
And that's it. We have, what is it, like 70% of downtown office space is sitting empty. We have people in the streets right now that could be living in that space, but it's not going to look like an apartment.
Yeah, so there's just a basic fact that setting up SROs in office space is just much easier than setting up apartments.
That is, if I can summarize it in a sentence, that's exactly what I came here to say, basically, is that in my opinion, as a builder, what it would take for me to convert it, I can't redo the plumbing to put like 8 different bathrooms into these spaces. So you need to be more creative. Like, how are we going to fit people in here? And I'm trying to work around the word density because I don't want to get like put down in the street by the wrong people. But like that's where you're able to have a more meaningful amount of impact with the same amount of space. We'll put it that way.
Thank you.
Next, what did you say your last name is?
Lord,
Thank you.
Lord.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, you guys can email me at my professional email if you want, which is max@hammeranddriver.com. That's the name of my construction firm. But yeah.
ML, I'm the liaison from the planning board.
Yeah.
And I would suggest that, you go to the public comment to planning board as well.
I just applied for planning board. I
Seeing
know you emailed me once too. I tried to get coffee with you, but I'm an exceedingly busy young man.
If it was about a project, we can't do that, but anyway.
Yeah, it was about my run for city council.
You probably did not email me, or I never saw
I
it.
promise you we did.
Well, I don't remember, I didn't see it, but
Okay.
this would be a conversation, I think, that planning board, it'd be good for the planning board ears and the department that is the supporting department are the planning and development people, which is where those codes reside.
Yeah, I lurk around at the planning meetings, but I haven't spoken at one.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'm there.
Encourage you if you want to take this same conversation there.
Yeah, I'm sure it will be.
2 quick comments, Max. We did talk about office conversions at our last meeting because I had done a kind of a study tour of one that's going on next to E-Town.
Mhm.
It's office condos into condos, and you're right, it's like $1,000 a square foot, and you can only do a luxury product. And then the dorm model, I don't know, you're familiar with Bridge House?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
So
I actually
you know
volunteered with them once.
Okay, so that's what they do. It's kind of like you're expanding that idea to a broader market.
Yeah, so I mean, that's the thing, is a lot of like, it's about putting a bunch of little pieces together, right? Like to solve any complicated problem.
Okay.
Anything else? All right, thank you for your time.
Yeah, well, I mean, thank you very much for hearing me. And like I said, if anybody wanted to chat further, like, let me know. And yeah, I'll send you an email. Like I said, I've got an application in right now for plan board.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm already sponsoring somebody, and not that I'm on city council and have a vote.
Yeah, well, I've met with all those guys too. But take care, guys.
Thank you. Tiffany, were there others? Okay,
Yep, we have 2 community members on.
great, thank you.
We have Ben Myers. Ben, can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
There we go. You're set.
Sorry for the technical difficulties here. Yeah, so my name is Ben. I live in Boulder. I've worked for Tebow Properties for a decade, and Chip kindly invited me to the meeting, and I'm here just to hear your ideas and here to have a conversation. As you know, we're a pretty large property owner in town and have a lot of office vacancies that we've been trying to fill, and we've seen some businesses relocating to Boulder recently. We've been making a lot of deals to try to find tenants to lease the office spaces, but I'm curious to learn more about what this subject is about, and I'm here to be a resource to all of you and answer any questions to the best of my ability that y'all may have. And I'm pretty sick right now. I think it's going around. So that's really all I have to comment on. But just to let you guys know that I'm here and I'm happy to have a conversation with anybody. And if anybody has any questions.
Ben, has Tebow as an organization considered any conversions of the empty space for housing uses?
We have definitely looked into it. A lot of our office buildings, they have a kind of a different floor plate where the restrooms are in the center. And to convert that into apartments, there's a very, very large cost to it. So that's been our major hurdle is just it's almost more affordable just to scrape the whole building together and build a brand new apartment building. HVAC, plumbing, electrical, it all needs to be reworked.
And in light of what our previous public speaker just said, do you think that if code and zoning would allow, do you think Tebow would be open to doing more SRO, or not SRO, I guess it's, what did
Dorm
Max
style.
call it, dorm style?
Micro units is a nice euphemism.
So
Yeah,
I guess what I'm saying is not apartments where you have to have bathrooms per, but or it would be shared bathrooms. Do you think that's a possibility?
Yeah, I think we would definitely look at it and consider it. Yeah, so the answer would be yes, but we'd have to look at everything, the costs and all that.
Anybody else have questions?
Oh, Philip.
Hey, Ben, thanks for coming to the public comment.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Sure. Something that's often said about Boulder's housing market is that demand is inelastic. And there's like a cynical part of me that it sort of expects people to start saying that, with respect to commercial property, supply is inelastic because we have all this extra office space that's not being used. And I'm just like, my basic question is, how come the rents for those spaces don't just plummet? Like maybe they should be half or a third of what they would be otherwise. And I'm curious if that's because of the financialization model, like maybe if it's based on property values or return on investment from investors, or like kind of what's keeping prices from just meeting demand?
We have dropped our office prices across our whole portfolio. For example, we have a 5,000 square feet office space on the Pearl Street Mall, and we've dropped our base rent in half to try to attract tenants. And that's unfortunately still vacant. We have given really good deals pretty much all across the board. One thing to note is the triple net expenses on a building, which is like mostly property taxes. Those haven't really come down at all. And that gets passed through to the tenant. So property taxes are still pretty high.
Do you want property taxes to come down, or is that in conflict with keeping the spreadsheets, the values on those properties high?
I don't know the answer to that question. I'm not involved in like the accounting or tax side of things. I'm more on the operations side. But I think it would only benefit us. We protest a lot of our property taxes every year to try to keep those triple net expenses as low as possible for the tenants who lease from us. But I don't know the exact answer to your question. It's kind of beyond me. I'm more kind of boots on the ground.
Any other questions for Ben?
Well, thank you all, and feel free to reach out, email. I think Chip has my contact info, and I love what you guys are doing, and here to help.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
All right, and we have one other community member. We have Lynn. All
With
right,
all-
Lynn, can you hear us?
All due respect to Ben, if there's going to be an iterative process, I would appreciate if you have that as a separate part of open comment for developers and residents separate, because I can't interact with you individually, like it's just not ethical to do that. So potentially they're getting tax breaks. He himself said there's silos. There's people working in different departments. There's, rental-backed securities. There's private equity funds. We have to look at the root cause of why these commercial spaces are there in the first place, and then while they're empty. And I'll tell you what happens from watching in planning board, and that is developers are given subsidies based on the fact that they're providing commercial. Well, that's probably not going to happen anymore because everybody knows the commercial is a joke. I mean, with the Olive, it's 10 years of empty commercial space. And I had a feeling, you can't just throw a bunch of homeless people or a bunch of residential into a commercially developed space. It's like he said. Then you'd also have to take off the upstairs because this has already been, these problems that happen are long-term consequential, really. The model for housing in Boulder is Marpa House. But how many of you know what happened with Marpa House? John Cobb was in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and he's the owner. And John Kirkwood, a Hill developer, got involved with the neighbors, wanting and dining them. And Lisa Spalding and the neighborhood wanted to help the residents buy Marpa House for her own interests and for the neighborhood's interests. And as a result, he turned and told John the bottom line that the neighbors would pay, and they outbid him. John Cobb outbid him. And then John Kirkwood built into there 16 three-bedroom units, rent by the bedroom, $1,700 a month, last I know, about 2 years ago. And then after the fact, he was so hungry for bedrooms are for people, but he couldn't wait because his project went through before then. So he tried to convert the dining room to a bedroom, which was a big disaster because it didn't work and the students had to move out for a period of time. This is the model housing for Boulder, is Marpa. You know what? 2 blocks from me is an Alpine and Fifth house. The concept plans are up for 5 bedrooms and 8 bathrooms. 8 bathrooms. Marpa House had 6 bathrooms and 40 people. So you decide, what more can I say? Bye. Thanks.
Thank you, Lynn. Does anybody have any questions for Lynn? All right, thank you. Tiffany, anybody else for public comment?
No, their hands are raised.
All right. We'll go ahead and close public comment then and move on to matters from the board. Lauren put together a great panel and Holly is going to moderate, so I'll let you go.
It's off to the races.
Off to the races.
All right, so I'm Holly Hendrickson, for those online, and here I'm a senior project manager with Housing and Human Services. So I'll just give a little intro to the subject from kind of where Housing and Human Services sits, and then hand it off to all the experts in the room. So a few years ago, there was a neuro-inclusive housing summit in Boulder here, and Kurt and I attended, and we're really moved by it. And Kurt said, let's figure this out. So aye, Captain, I've been trying to figure it out since then. We have a parcel that's directly south of the new fire station on 30th. So it's 30th and Bluff. It's a site where we're considering this. And in this consideration, we applied for a technical assistance grant from CHAFA to start this process to explore the possibilities of it. And we completed that last year. And then since then, we're kind of just doing some more fact finding, trying to figure out exactly what we should be doing here. So I certainly appreciate the initiative, the gathering here to talk specifically about neuro-inclusive housing, to kind of push this forward and see how we can move forward on this. All right, so I'll stop there. So we have 4 panelists. We have Tim Dolan and Kristen Heiser on screen here, and we'll start with you. You both have presentations that I can share. Tim Dolan is from the Inclusive Housing Coalition. Kristen Heiser is from the Broomfield Housing Authority. sorry, Alliance. Sorry. I'm not looking at my notes well enough, apparently. And then after Tim and Kristen speak, we'll pass it off to Andy and Brian here in the room, if that sounds okay with everyone. Cool. All right, so Tim, I'll pass it off to you unless there's any other.
No, just thank you all for coming. I'm excited for the conversation here.
Yeah, me too. Thanks very much for having me. I did send Lauren over a presentation. Do you have it up or?
Have it, and I will share it right now.
All right. While that's being kind of teed up, I just want to thank everybody for having me. My name is Tim Dolan, and I am with an organization called the Inclusive Housing Coalition. And so Lauren was good enough to invite me to talk a little bit about neuro-inclusive housing and kind of give you a little bit of background to the extent that I can. And I thought I would do it, just sort of through the lens of the IHC, and hoping that will give you kind of a basis for conversation for the other folks that are coming up. Neuro-inclusive housing, or housing for IDD, or some of the other terms that you want to use. That's why we were organized a couple of years ago, and we did this. I and some colleagues when I was at Chaffa, and I was doing and we were convening a innovation team to see how we could develop more housing for folks with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So if you want to go to the next slide, that would be great. And so, and which is sort of, our mission, right, is to address the unique affordable housing crisis experienced by people with IDD by generating awareness and influencing partnerships by building a diverse opportunities in Colorado. And I'll talk a little bit more about all those things later. I would just underscore a big part of this happens to be affordability, right? There are options out there, of course, if one has a lot of resources, but being a houser myself, I sort of come at it from an affordable standpoint. So next slide. I just wanted to give a little bit of overview of the stakeholders that are sort of involved. And I'll tell you, over the last couple of years, 3 or 4 years that we've organized the IHC, it's really it's opened my eyes to a lot of different the wide spectrum of stakeholders involved in this, or that have a need. There are many different levels represented, all the way from folks with intellectual developmental disabilities, such as autism, for instance, but not exclusively autism, who might be able to live independently in affordable housing if they had some supports. And those don't necessarily need to be very intensive supports. They can be more what we sometimes call concierge type or drop-in types of supports, which are sort of the more formal supports that might be in a property provided by a service provider or another organization, but also natural supports as well. Your neighbors, right? The people that you live with. Those are the supports that might be needed, all the way up to full-time support, right? 24-hour support. There's also a high need population that is in need of housing as well, and so that's a different. So the spectrum is very broad along there. So in light of that, I'm just going to talk briefly about one of the kind of very overlapping things that we see in neuro-inclusive housing, particularly among those that are individuals that are of higher needs and who avail themselves or are able to get Medicaid provided home and community-based services waivers. There are 2 types of waivers basically that we see. There's actually 3, but for the purposes of keeping things moving, I'm just going to identify basically 2 waivers that we see. The developmental disability, or the DD waiver, that provides higher needs, 24-hour care, and then supportive living services or the SLS waiver that provides more limited supports for folks who are able to live more independently. These waivers are managed through the Colorado Department of Healthcare Policy and Financing, more commonly known as HCPF. Now, these are services that tenants in a building or in a home or wherever they live can avail themselves of separately from a property. They can choose a service provider like A&I Avenues or Imagine, I think it was once called, for instance. And so that is a service, that is a service provision that is provided to an individual in neuro-inclusive housing, but is different from other types of services that might be provided at the property level. I'm just trying to give you a sense of sort of the population here. One population that we are dealing or working with now through some projects that we have going on at the IHC are aging caregivers. So those home situations where adults are living with adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities are living with caregivers who are over the age of 60. Whether they be parents or other family members or other types of caregivers, those folks are aging. And so it begs the question of what happens to those individuals with IDD once those caregivers are no longer with us, or at least no longer to be able to provide services. So it is shaping up to be sort of a cliff situation, not to be dire, but it's something that we are very focused on. So I don't want to spend a lot of time because it's not really in our wheelhouse to talk about sort of the Medicaid provided or service provided for individuals. The sort of the trade group that works with service providers to talk about things like Medicaid services and the cost of Medicaid services and the need for more service providers is handled through Alliance of Colorado, but they are certainly very much stakeholders in the issue of neuro-inclusive housing. Next slide, please. So just to give you some brief numbers here, these are a little bit dated, and so I would guess if anything they are sort of higher right now, but there are at least 127,000 people in Colorado that have requested services in Colorado for IDD, 73% of which live with caregivers, right? Or live at home, I guess I should say. And at least 20,000 of those live with caregivers over the age of 60. And so as you can see, just in Colorado, it is there is certainly a need just based on the numbers. Next slide. So our priority areas for 2026, and I hope this just gives you sort of a flavor of kind of the things that we see out there when we're talking about neuro-inclusive housing in the housing space in Colorado. Certainly there is a shortage of cognitive accessible or neuro-inclusive affordable housing because there's an overall lack of affordable housing. There is, for many years now, the need for affordable housing in Colorado has not been met. More and more folks are becoming housing insecure as they pay more and more above what is affordable of their incomes to housing. As I mentioned, aging parents and caregivers who have individuals living at home, and what is a proper setting and what is a desirable setting for them after the caregivers are no longer able to provide care is certainly something we are looking at. As part of our coalition, we have a lot of folks who are very interested in, as I said, that end of the need spectrum that deals with higher needs individuals, folks that need perhaps 24/7 care, folks who aren't necessarily able to live independently, but could potentially have a degree of independence if they were able to have a spot with caregivers with them. So that is something that we're looking at. And then just sort of, more, more on the tactical side of things, looking at the resources that are out there, in government related services that are out there. One thing that we've been dealing with for the past couple of years is the availability of housing vouchers, housing choice vouchers, be it through local housing authorities or through the state, in particular through their 811 housing 811 program. How can those be better? How can those better serve the IDD population? Next slide. So, what's at stake here, right? Well, a lot. If we're not serving this population, then the potential circumstances are displacement and possibly even homelessness. But at the very least, it is not living in an optimal situation and in a setting that is providing the opportunity for folks to thrive, which is what we actually really want. And if you look at the bottom there, those are just kind of examples of, well, what are the costs? Because there's, if folks are displaced into an institution, God forbid, or even homeless, which would be even worse, then there's a cost to society for that. There's a cost to the community, which is more, I think, than providing just decent, supported, affordable housing. Next slide. So I think some other panelists are going to talk a little bit about this, but just to underscore that when we're talking about housing, we're talking about all kinds of housing. We're not just necessarily talking about multifamily housing. There is a desire out there for providing living situations and group homes and host homes and even single family homes. So the desire for what type of housing to live in amongst the population is as broad as it is for neurotypicals, as one might imagine. So, but what we really kind of need to concentrate here on is how those services are being provided. If a person is in a host home, for instance, or an institution, then they are in a provider-controlled situation, which might be a good situation for some folks, and some folks are desirous of that type of situation. However, many are also in favor of consumer-controlled situations, where the individual within the housing themselves, they're choosing who they want to be their service provider through their Medicaid waivers. And so that's something that we try to focus on. Next slide. So some of the needs that we see amongst the population, the IDD population, for neuro-inclusive housing are kind of spelled out here. And I won't read them all to you, but I'll just say that, on one end of the spectrum, it's socialization, right? The opportunity to live in a community where one is valued, no matter what their circumstances, and a part of the community rather than being isolated. And so that's something that we see as very valuable to neuro-inclusive housing. Certainly there's room for accessible design. And, our experience is that including accessible design into housing, affordable housing, if it were affordable housing, multifamily housing, for instance, is beneficial for all the tenants, regardless of neurotype. And so, but for it might be some of the amenities and design features might be nice to haves for the neurotypical population. They can be critical for the neurodiverse population. So there's a lot of work out there being done by some organizations that are augmenting design standards to include cognitive accessibility, along with other disability forward designs as well. Next slide. So this is just a little bit, I'll run right through this. This is just a little bit about the Inclusive Housing Coalition, if you're interested. But the message I want to impart here is that There is an organization out there. We are a collection of housers and developers and service providers, and most importantly, parents and self-advocates. And so we are growing. You know, we try to grow so that we are bringing in a bigger coalition all the time, so that we can be a collective voice for this population. There are a lot of kind of things that are going on throughout the state. They can be fairly siloed, and so you know, it's oftentimes we get groups together and they're like, well, you know, we didn't know you guys were doing this. We're doing this, and let's get together and let's talk about how we can potentially do this together. Shout out to Kristen and Lauren, who have been great kind of advocates for us and participants in the Inclusive Housing Coalition. Next slide. This is just, here's our website. That's probably the biggest takeaway from this particular slide. We're at ihccolorado.org, or you have my contact information. You can call me or email me whenever you want. I'd be happy to answer any questions about our organization or how you might be able to participate. And so to that notion, I will, to the next slide, I think I am. Well, first, you know, I would invite you to go onto our website and take a look at these publications along with some of the other resources we have. I think that these three publications are good primers on what is going on in Colorado vis-a-vis neuro-inclusive housing. So I would invite you to go on there and find those and take a read. None of them are, well, some of them are a little bit extensive, but they are all you know, very well done and accessible for anybody that has any level of conversions with neuro-inclusive housing. Next slide. Is what I was going to say before is, so what are the opportunities with the Inclusive Housing Coalition to sort of move the needle or help with neuro-inclusive housing in the state of Colorado? We have three committees that we sponsor that I sort of lead. One is our existing IDD housing and government related issues committee. I won't read all this, but this is the committee where we look at some of the IDD housing that is already out there that is not performing sort of up to speed. And so a lot of those happen to be group homes that are financed through HUD financing. And what are some of the, you know, what are some of the pilot programs that are going on right now to reutilize and make best use of some of those group homes that no longer necessarily function as group homes financially? We also, you know, all of there's some legislation out there right now now that the state legislature has opened its session that are relevant to, or could be relevant to IDD housing as they are relevant to all affordable housing. So we look into those. Also, we, you know, examine areas where we can better work with, where the community can better work with state agencies like the Division of Housing or the or HCMF. Next slide. Another a committee that we have is our Elderly Alignment Design and Supports. Early on, we recognized that there are that elderly affordable housing in this population, they sometimes have some of the same needs in terms of cognitive accessibility. And so what can we learn from senior housing that would help us with IDD housing? What are some of the opportunities there? And then, as I said, a big part of it is our project working on that issue of excuse me, aging caregivers. Next slide. We also have our IDD Risk Factors and Empowerment Committee. This committee is really, at the moment, focused on a creation of a neurodiverse friendly communities certification program. The idea here is this: we, you know, we focus a lot on IDD housing and the bricks and mortar itself, so the building itself, whether it be a community or whether or not it be a building. This is a program that we're trying to get going that will assist in developing knowledge and training for those businesses and retail establishments and municipal offices that are outside of the bricks and mortar, outside of the door of these neuro-inclusive housing, and how can we train them to be more aware of neurodiversity and so we're working on a certification program to be able to designate particular businesses or communities even as neurodiverse friendly. Next slide. This is just a plug for an upcoming event. If you're interested, it's a webinar that we're having on February 25th. This webinar features an organization out of Washington State called Partners for Housing. They are an organization that does a lot of work with families to find appropriate roommate situations for folks with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And right now they are working with the Colorado Disability Opportunity Office under a grant to provide free services to up to 80 families in Colorado through June 30th, I think it is. So if you have any interest in that, please, it's free. Please sign up on our website or pass along the information to somebody that might be interested. And I think the next slide is thank you. And thank you for the time. Thank you for having me here today. And I look forward to the discussion, and I will pass it along.
Thanks, Tim.
Thanks. Shall we do questions now? Are there any questions we should chat about now? Fresh in your mind? I have a question, but I don't want to take over anyone else's. Tim, you mentioned the certification program.
Yeah.
Would that be a way to like identify or create a like portfolio of homes that are accessible and a realistic option for as like a designated neurodiverse unit, or is it more of like the community services that are involved? Like, is it a way to build the stock without actually building the stock?
Right. It is the latter. It really is about, and we're building on what some other communities throughout the country and in Ireland in particular have done. What it is it's interesting because this particular idea was brought to us by a member of our coalition that is a self-advocate. And, the thinking was this: the neuro-inclusive housing is terrific and the supports that go along with it. But what happens when folks go out into the community and they go to different businesses or they have to go to, or they go to their place of employment and, or they're looking for a place of employment, or they're going to a recreation center or a municipal office or something. How are they being treated in those situations, and how can we help make those businesses and organizations and institutions more or better equipped to identify or to work and live with the neuro-inclusive population? They, as it was put to me, there's a, just in terms of business retail, there's a customer base there that's not being served as efficiently as it could be, just because folks might, with IDD, for sensory reasons or for other anxiety reasons, might steer away from visiting a particular establishment. How can we make dealing with those establishments more friendly? That's really the basis of it.
All right. I think that's all for now. Kristen, you're up next. I'll get your slides ready here.
Thank you. So good evening. This is fun. I don't know if you all know, but I used to work in Boulder, so it's kind of fun to see all these familiar faces. Hi, Brian. I'm going to be calling on you in a second, and you're going to have to talk through some of these photos with me that I'm sharing. Actually, quick side note, Brian, did you bring a slide deck, or are we going to both work off of mine?
I did. I've got a slide deck as well. So
Oh, okay. So we might have some duplication a little bit, but
glad you
good
went first.
evening and thank you for having me. I am Kristen Heiser. I'm the executive director of the Broomfield Housing Alliance. We are actually the housing authority for the city and county of Broomfield. We got started 4 years ago. And the Grove at Cottonwood is our first development that we're pursuing. And what we're building is a neuro-inclusive, independent living community designed to support self-determination, meaningful participation, and community involvement. And you heard me deferring to Brian because he and his colleagues are the architect that designed this, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. But just we have a great team that's helping us do this. Next slide, please. So I'm going to start with just kind of the how this development came together. So 4 years ago, we had the opportunity to buy a piece of land in Broomfield. And it's an infill site, and it's right next door to Bell Swan Early Children's Center, which is a neurodiverse children's school, early children's education center. And we had the opportunity to buy this land. So that was one of the first things I did when I got the job. And I was soon approached by a group of parents who invited me to coffee. And I didn't really know what I was sitting down to hear about, but I knew that they wanted to talk about housing. And who this group of parents were, there was 5 mothers who are all in their 60s and 70s with adult children with intellectual and developmental disabilities. I'm so sorry. And they shared their stories and really their fears of where their children were going to live when they can no longer take care of them. And it was a very moving experience to hear from each of them about what their needs were, and they had really nowhere to turn. And so BHA, with this opportunity, decided let's figure this out. Actually, I used to work for Kurt using his approach, like let's figure it out. Well, we're gonna make this happen. So we actually got the same technical assistance grant from CHAFA, and that provided us the opportunity to get a market study as well as a feasibility study to show that there was a need for this in the community and that we could feasibly pull this off. So that's actually when I first really I knew Tim, but when we started to really work closely together on this topic because he was still at CHAFA and he was about to launch the effort that he's been leading. So it was just kind of kismet that we met at that time. So we had the land, we knew what we needed to pull together for the community, and then we needed an architect to help us figure this out. And we knew at the primary center of what we wanted to create was providing a sense of community because we knew this was going to be a community for adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And we wanted to make sure that they felt safe and comfortable in community with each other. And because I had worked with Caddis previously in Boulder and knew of their commitment to community building and co-housing, they were the top of the list. And so Brian's team and BHA collaborated and we started to design the Grove at Cottonwood. And then we went through the entitlement process and we got it financed. And I'll talk about that in a little bit more detail in a second. We're currently under construction and we're going to open our doors on September 5th. And I'll get into more details about kind of what the Grove is actually going to be. But what I really want to highlight on this slide is the Grove is all about community and the community telling us what they need and what they're looking forward to, how they want to live, what they want their community to look like, and how they want to participate in that. So every step of the way, we have had parents and service providers, but really most profoundly, self-advocates that have helped us all along the way. So in that first picture, those are, I'm looking at them, Desiree Kamika Galloway, who's an incredible expert in IDD housing that day, and we facilitated a community conversation with parents and self-advocates and service providers to say, what should we create here? And then this picture below is us with Brian's team led us through a incredible exercise again with through like how should this site function? And then we actually went to a couple of our service provider agencies and had focus sessions.
Then you're
Hopefully
breaking up a
future
little bit.
residents. And as you can see from that, oh, you are? Am I? Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Not quite sure. Well, why don't I take my video off?
Perfect.
Does that
Thank
work
you.
better? Let's give this a try. All right. So anyways, what you see here is we went to Friends of Broomfield. They conducted a focus session and, some of them are nonverbal. And so what they decided to do was the self-advocates created signs that had smiley faces and sad faces. So on the green happy and we would just ask them questions. Do you like lots of light? Do you want to have a roommate? Do you like living with pets? Do you like to cook for yourself? And they would either verbally share their wants and desires, or they would hold up their sign. And that's how we really started to engage and figure out what we wanted to create for this community. Then you see, we actually we broke ground this past year. And the picture there is actually the people in those pictures are all of our investors, Chaffa and a variety of other folks. But really, there's other pictures that we have that it's all self-advocates and families that were there with us that day. And the woman that you see that I'm standing next to at the groundbreaking, that is a woman named Gabby. She's our number one self-advocate. She has been on this journey with us the entire time. She went to every single planning board, city council meeting, maybe a little bit warmer received by our community. It is affordable housing. So it was a rough entitlement process, and our community came out against it, the neighbors around it. Not because of this affordable housing. So but really, we had self-advocates with us all along the way that helped get this through. And then you see the young sister and in the picture with her arm around him. Actually, the brother is one that started this because his mother was one that contacted us and said, my son, when he was little, would say, am I going to have to take care of my sister? And that sparked that family to say, we got to figure out something else. And here he got to celebrate as much as loves his sister, that that he really wanted this opportunity for her to have an independent living situation, and that he was able to create the life that he wanted to. Another piece that we've done, you'll see in the picture up in the corner, is that we've had parents help us in the design, so the bricks and furnishings, and there's self-advocates there as well. And so we went to downtown Denver and they're helping us make all those types of decisions. And then just the cool picture of our team through. Next slide, please. But the whole point of this was just that. Oops, are you able to move to the next slide? Oh, it's super slow. I don't know what that's about. That was not intentional. But what all those community voices and self-advocates ended up creating is we are designing a community that's prioritizes the needs of individuals with IDD. But what we also heard is that really the best model is neurodiversity and neuroinclusivity. So while we are designing for the needs for IDD, we are seeing this as being a diverse community. So it is being designed and will be available to seniors and small families. And so we'll offer 40 units of affordable housing they are all accessible, rental homes. We'll also have a community house. We're offering 1 and 2 bedrooms, and that was very thoughtfully done too, because a lot of individuals want to live alone, but there could be situations where there's a roommate situation where 2 individuals with IDD who are friends from day programs or however they know each other might want to be roommates. There's also families that might choose to have a sibling potentially live with and be a caregiver to their sibling. There's also opportunities because of the 2 bedrooms that somebody could actually have a hired caregiver that lives with them. The property is going to serve income between 30 and 60% AMI. One of the ways that we are the affordability and the costs involved is we secured 10 811 housing vouchers. These are project-based rental assistance, and they're specific for persons with disabilities. And so this 10 vouchers will help bring down the cost so we can really meet those deepest affordability needs. And one of the things that's been a process that we've gone through, but we feel like is a real win. Often these vouchers are referred to through the Metro Denver Homeless Initiative, MDHI. We've been able to work with the state to get it so our referral agencies are going to be our local service providers who work with this population. And so instead of having MDHI be our main referral agency, it's actually going to be Friends of Broomfield, which is a homegrown agency that serves adults with IDD, as well as Imagine. So that's how we are getting community members that we've been working with and have the most just are able to serve the population of our neighbors. The other piece that is really important to us with this, it's a consumer-driven service model. And so you might be familiar with a permanently supportive site and is attached, so you might have, I'm trying to think of an example from my Boulder days, like up at Lee Hill, you have, at least when I was there, you had the shelter services while BHP own the property. Here is BHA will own the property, but we're actually using a variety of service providers. So we're entering into MOUs with Friends of Broomfield, Imagine, a group of called Blue Spruce, that they will provide services. And the reason that we're doing this is because we really want to provide choice to our future residents, that they can choose how they live, where they live, who they get their services from, and it's not just required that they use one specific service provider. Boy, I'm talking really fast. Next slide, please. So just really quick, the lay of the land of who's doing this with us. So we will co-own and co-develop it, and we're working with Blue Line Development. They're a great development firm out of Montana. And then we have Caddis. Brian and his amazing team are the architects. We're working with Denuve Construction. You're probably familiar with them. They've done some great work up in Broomfield. But really, the heart of all this work are the parents, the service providers, and our future residents that have been along on this ride with us the entire time. The way that we're financing it, just to get into those weeds, we did receive 9% low-income housing tax credits. We also received state credits. We received a great grant, a home funds from the Boulder Broomfield Home Consortium. We did receive funding from the Division of Housing and Developer Equity. Next slide, please. And here's just these amazing pictures. And I mean, this is Brian's team at work. Kristen and Jesus. But what this is we intentionally designed it so it provides choice. So for an individual who wants to live it a little bit more independently, these are going to be units that are that would be more conducive to that. So these are our, there's 5 units in this property. Next slide, please. I'm going to roll through these and then Brian, maybe you can go into a little bit more detail about the design decisions or the design decisions you bring to this type of development. Gosh, that is like the slowest.
Yeah, the connection's not great.
Okay, is that what's going on? All right. And so then here's another, we are in an established single family neighborhood. We didn't want to go in with just a huge box of an apartment building. Oh, and then here's Bali, but there is an option that kind of looks more like an apartment building. And what you see in the middle there, that's our common house. The house is going to offer, we're going to have on-site property management. We're hiring a resident services concierge that's going to take care of kind of just like those daily needs of our residents, as well as social amenities and social connections. It also has a warming kitchen and dining rooms where a lot of that socializing can occur. And then that's the apartment option for people with a little bit higher needs would be, we're envisioning being more comfortable. And jump to the last slide. And I'm happy to answer any questions because there's just a lot you can talk about on this stuff. it's just the variety of options that are available to pull off this kind of housing. Oh yeah, that's our site plan. So you can see, and then finally go to the last slide. I just want to, since you guys are talking about housing and how to do these types of developments. So yes, a developer, a housing authority could develop, get the land, develop, own, manage, and work with service providers. That is one option. Other ways to facilitate this type of housing is participating in a partnership, and we're kind of a silent partner, a special limited partner. We are asking that partner to prioritize this population. So we have gone, Ulysses Development is building 152 units. We are SLP. We secured the 811 vouchers that they needed, that they could set aside 8 units specifically for this population. That's ways that a housing authority, if they're going to participate as a SLP, can strongly encourage that this population be designed for, and those options are made available. And then also, just at the end, just offering, making sure that any developments built are offices that serve this population. Because like Tim was saying, a lot of the needs that they have are very similar to all the needs we all have, whether it is trauma-informed design, or it's accessibility needs, or it's sensory considerations. There's just a variety of things that we would all benefit from. So to offer the amenities, so any property can be open and available, because this is choice. So doing a LIHTC deal like we've done, that is one option. But like Tim said, the wants and desires of this population are just as varied as you can imagine. Some want a single family, some want to live in a market rate apartment, some want to live at their family home or with their siblings. And so however we approach this, we have to remember that just needs to be a variety of choice and options, so they can make the self-determined choices as to how they want to live and be in community. So I will stop talking at that point, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
I have a couple of questions for you. Unfortunately, you cut out. You started to say something about during the entitlement process, there was some pushback from, I didn't quite.
Yeah, so long story short, NIMBYism is alive and well everywhere, and including Broomfield. And Broomfield's new to affordable housing. You all in Boulder have been doing this for decades, and Broomfield's pretty new to this conversation. And this was one of the first developments. This was the first development that their new housing bring through. So there was just a lot at the heart of a single family neighborhood. I'm going to take myself off camera so I'm not breaking up, if maybe I am. But so it was just your typical NIMBYism. But what I think was really interesting is I think that people would be kinder and gentler, and they weren't. So just be prepared for that, is my lesson.
Love the candor. I do have a couple slides on that, so I can elaborate a little bit.
So a couple of other questions I had. You mentioned that this particular project is inclusive to all. I'm just curious, out of those units, did BHA decide to kind of like, what would you say, dedicate, earmark a certain number of folks
So we have the 10 vouchers that will be specifically used for individuals with disabilities. That those vouchers have to be used by that population. The balance of the units, the 30 units, our goal is to have as many people with IDD living in our community, because the need's so great and the one is so great to be there. However, because of fair housing and a variety of other things, we can't limit the property to IDD. And so that's why it is, and it's also what we have heard from not only experts like Desiree, who do they want to live with? They want to live with a variety of people. What they would say is, I don't want to live with people just like myself. I want to live with like all sorts of people. They go and they work with all sorts of people and that too. So that's what we heard loud and clear. So for regulatory reasons, we can't set aside all 40 units for this population, but also we just don't think it's the best in terms of community and creating community and relationships, and also being very cognizant that we do not want to perpetuate any sort of isolation or concentration in our community.
Since I have one lot more question, sorry. As far as the financing, that was quite a healthy list. And I'm just curious, did you find that you had more sources when doing this project? Because it wasn't just looking at LIHTC funding and things associated with affordable housing, but were you able to access more options?
No.
It's a pretty standard.
Thanks for understanding what I was trying to ask.
It would, yeah. So no, I mean, I would say that we are going after grant funds. One of the things, because we are very committed to providing resident services, that is not something that you can write into your LIHTC deal. You get a little bit. So we are doing, I mean, BHA ourselves are putting in our own operating funds to pay for staffing positions and programming to provide the resident services, as well as we are doing a lot of grant writing in terms of that. So as of right now, I wouldn't say that there's special pots of money that are particularly serving this population. I wish there were, but there's not. And so we're kind of in the same boat as every other deal, scrambling for those dollars. I will also add too, one of the things we just looked at is the cost to build for this population is no different from the cost of building any other LIHTC deal. It's just the costs are not higher for designing for this when it comes to the end of the day.
So Kristen, as the city is considering embarking on a neuro-inclusive community, what would you say your biggest challenges were getting to where you're at today under construction?
Honestly, I think the key for us, because of this population, because of what we want to accomplish, it's finding the right architectural design partner who's going to get this and believe in it and work alongside us with our community to pull this off. So kudos to Brian, who his team just gets it. So I would say that, as well as service providers, because at the end of the day, we don't want to just have apartments that people are going to and isolating in at the end of the day. We really are very intentional about creating a sense of community, and we have really solid service partners who are committed to helping us do that. I will share really quick, we're leaning into and learning how we're going to do that. We are spending a lot of time talking to other communities across the country as to how they're doing this, and every community is different. The staffing models, the programming, every single one is unique, and what they all say is it really driven by those residents. And so we're coming up with a best case scenario, but we know after day one it's going to be thrown out the door, and we're going to have to come up with something else, because we're going to hear from our residents as to what they want from their community, and that's what we're going to have to respond to.
Any other questions? I'll just, Kristen, thank you for the presentation. And I also have to thank Amanda on your team. I've talked with Amanda several times, and she's always open to share and let me throw ideas at her, and her kindly telling me that I'm on the wrong track. So I've really appreciated her help in this process. So thank you.
Thanks. She's the smart one of the two of us, so I'll let her know that you called her out. Thank you.
Great. Okay.
I just want to make a quick comment. I mean, Kristen, you said so many wonderful, nice things about our team. I really appreciate that. But I just want to point out that without somebody hiring us to do the work, nothing can happen. So, without Kristen and Amanda making this happen, or you guys creating policy that allows this to happen, or gives people the incentive to do work like this, I'm just sitting in a room by myself somewhere making little sketches.
So yeah, she hired you to do more things.
Awesome. So now, Andy, we'll turn it to you.
Okay.
You're ready.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me to this conversation, or I should say also my dear wife and is also, there's a lot of what I may be saying here that is somewhat duplicative of what others have said, but I'm saying it from the personal position. If you've heard talk about, families with children with IDD and the parents are over 60, well, check. We're part of that population. But I guess also before sharing you with the specifics of our journey through a variety of housing options for our daughter Kendra, I'd like to preface that with a disclaimer, and that is that while there may be many similarities in our story with other families in Boulder, our family is fortunate to have the financial resources that provide a degree of flexibility that's unattainable to most people. And so even within that, we've had our struggles, but for so many, the struggles are so much higher. And so that's part of what I'd like to communicate. And I'm not a very good public speaker, so I'm going to be reading this to you. I'm sorry. So what is our story? Our daughter Kendra is 34. She was born with a chromosomal disorder that places her squarely in the population of individuals with IDD. Like all parents, our goal as she was exiting the public school system here in Boulder was to find purpose, community, and a safe and secure place for her to live. Focusing on these issues of community and affordable place to live. Boulder does actually reasonably well on the first thing, creating community, but is severely challenged on the latter of affordable places. We all know that. When we moved here in 2008 from Northern California, we were impressed by the services and recreational and social programs available to Boulder residents with IDD. So much so that despite an original plan that we were just going to be here for 2 years, here it is 17 years later, and we're here. But as to the living options, though, it's tough enough for young professionals to find affordable housing in Boulder. And for individuals that find employment difficult to secure and who may be surviving on anywhere between 10 and 25% of the county's area median income. I think Kristen was talking about their target for the non-IDD population is 30 to 60%. But if you're surviving on SSI, which is a significant portion of this population, that's $900 a month. And then if you earn a little bit more than that, well, you can get, but every dollar you earn, you lose $0.50. So it's, there's not a lot of funding for families that don't have other resources. So if you're talking about in Boulder, if you're paying less than $1,000 a month, that's unattainable, really. And I think, some of the statistics that I guess won't repeat those because you already heard those, but, there's lots of people statewide and lots in our community that are facing the situation. Our daughter doesn't actually live with us. She lives semi-independently, but, we are thinking about what happens when we're not here. We all, think about, well, we're going to have an empty nest. Well, when you're a parent with an adult child with IDD, you never have an empty nest. It's always part of your reality. So in our family's case, we're fortunate in that Kendra's grandparents established what's called a special needs trust with sufficient funding to purchase a townhouse for Kendra, where she lived from 2011 to 2021. And during this period, she lived with a combination of neurotypical and peer roommates, but mostly with live-in caregivers. And I think another that hasn't been talked about here is in that 10-year period, I think we went through probably about 14 different live-in caregivers that we had to hire. So stability of service providers is really tough. And while satisfying a need for a safe and secure housing, she often felt isolated and relied primarily on her paid caregivers to provide community connections. So it's like, it's just that much difficult. And you've heard a lot about creating a sense of community in the housing. That's really important because for some it's hard to create that. In 2019, as part of the Ramble Collective, which is a nonprofit my wife and I founded to support the employment goals of this population, we began a relationship with Boulder Housing Partners that resulted in the Bluebell building as part of 30 Pearl, the low-income housing project in the Boulder Junction district. The goal was to create affordable housing for individuals with IDD and the opportunity to create a sense of community amongst the residents. And together with the City of Boulder and Boulder Housing Partners, that project, I think there's a total of 120 total units, and 20 of those were designated with project-based vouchers for the IDD population as permanently affordable, which is a wonderful thing for the city to have done. And while the goal of affordability was met, for a variety of reasons, this project has faced challenges in terms of creating a sense of community and ensuring the safety and security of the residents. And while our daughter enjoyed her time living there, it wasn't an ideal match for her needs, and we started beginning to look for something as an alternative. And opportunity became available in 2023 when Kendra moved into a condo in the Wild Sage co-housing community in North Boulder, which Brian was the architect behind, which is sort of where we got to know you. The residents there, I think most of you probably understand the concept of co-housing. The residents there have accepted her and included her in many of the community activities. However, due to Kendra's disability, it's challenging for her to initiate engagement in community activities and is therefore dependent on others to facilitate these connections. We've come to the conclusion that she would do much better in a similar co-housing community model, but with a significant portion of her neighbors sharing the lived experience of life with an IDD. And just that allows sort of more spontaneity if you can create that community. And our vision now is to create something like that here in Boulder. We're partnering with Trailhead Community of Littleton to duplicate their success locally here in Boulder. Trailhead and Matt McMullen, who's a guest here tonight also, is on the board of Trailhead. It's a 83-unit apartment community that opened in the fall of 2024 with about 7,000 square feet of common area through which all residents pass on their way to their individual units, and is a pathway to create community because it's not like you're going down the hall and et cetera. And that 7,000 square foot space includes hangout space, a commercial kitchen and dining area, providing dinners 5 days a week, craft and game rooms, a gym, workout facilities, 24/7 concierge services, and so much more. In addition to individuals with IDD, there are seniors and moderate income young professionals sharing life together. Our goal is to replicate the spirit of Trailhead's approach in Boulder while using a co-housing based intentional community model and make it affordable to those who could benefit from what our project will offer. So that's kind of a personal statement of what it means in this community or this population. And I welcome any questions.
Wow, that was an amazing presentation. Wish you luck.
Thank you.
Do you have a site in mind for this co-housing community? Like how is that?
We've got ideas, but nothing yet.
So it's still in development.
It's yeah. Okay. Land is not easily accessible.
We know.
Do you know in Boulder County how many there are with IDD individuals?
I know at one time there was an estimate that 21,000 statewide estimate for those that are living with their family caregivers that are age 16 and above. At one time that was estimated at about 1,200 in Boulder County.
So you could fill the community.
Pardon?
You could fill a community.
Yeah, the need is much more than what we can possibly do.
But the goal is to have a mix.
Yeah, and I think that's, I think Matt could answer some questions with the experience at Trailhead, that has been critical. And I think Kristen was saying the same thing for what they're trying to create at the Grove. is not to have, something that is, and there are other across the country, there are communities that have been built that are 100% folks with IDD. But for us, one of the things when we were working with BHP before the 30 Pro project kind of came to fruition, there was another site where we were specifically looking at the idea of seniors and folks with IDD. And sort of the thinking that we've had with that is that, there's a lot of, seniors, when we all get older, what do we do with our lives? But, there's service opportunities for that population. And it gives a chance for the folks with IDD to connect with people that aren't just part of their community. It's over to you.
My question for you is why do you think you're not a good public speaker? Because I was really.
Well, I read it. I don't memorize anything.
Yeah, don't memorize anything. So I have to respond to what's on the pictures in front of me.
Line up here. You're just not doing so well right now. So
it's a wet charger.
It's the wet charger. Yep, that's not a charger out wet. Probably wasn't a good idea.
You need a charger?
No, you need a new computer. Just kidding. All right, here we go.
You have not thumb drive if you want to switch to a different computer.
It's okay. We'll make it work here. So I will. Pull this up. Yeah. Okay.
Cool. Yeah, so my office is Caddis Collaborative. You guys have heard about that from Kristen so far, and from Andy. I was also on the City Boulders Planning Board for about 8 years, and I sat on HAB a bit during that and Landmarks Board, so I'm real familiar. I'm really curious about how the city and HAB can work to influence good outcomes on this type of housing, right? That seems to me like the real question here for HAB is like, what do you guys do internally with staff, or what do you say to City Council to make stuff like this happen? And I think before we even get into this at all, really, the two biggest things right now, aside from working closely with staff to advance, especially that one particular property, and shake your pockets and see if there's other city-owned properties that could work, is to look at how to incorporate this thinking into the 10-year major update to the Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan, right? This is the time to seed that kind of stuff in there so that later everyone else can point to it and say, hey, look what we said back here, we should do that. And then that's also going to fall into the reworking, ideally, or completely rewriting of Title IX, the land use code for the city of Boulder, which I'm a huge fan of. I would advocate all day long for that. And in that are lots of barriers. You heard the speaker in the beginning from the member of the public talk about boarding houses and stuff like that. I think we've done the only boarding house in Boulder for 50 years. And it's because the cooperative housing ordinance was a mess. And when we wrote that, it was still a mess, and now it's gone, thankfully. But there's barriers to this stuff happening inside our land use code, right? So that's an important place where HAB could affect some change. So next slide. And that's our office. It's full of nice, wonderful people. Maybe most importantly, including Chair of HAB, Karen Hoskin. We're lucky to have her in there. So, okay, next one. We'll go through this pretty quickly. So this is the Grove of Cottonwood. Next slide. And I'll talk a little bit about what Kristen said in the beginning here in terms of entitlement challenges, because that's another place where city staff and HAB and City Council and Planning Board have a major role. There are fewer homes on the site than there could have been based on the baseline zoning because of NIMBYism. So by allowing neighbors to fight off density, development, impact, all the sort of euphemisms for having people live around you, we're not serving as many people as we could. And so I am like, I'm going to allow myself to be a little bit more like critical of the process because I want you guys to like learn from that. I think that's the important part of this to share. So what we ended up with is, 2-story buildings, 1 and 2-story buildings along the, building A and B on the east side there, and a 3-story elevator served building surrounding a courtyard on the left side. And the most important thing to us in designing projects like this is to be oriented on how do we allow this project, even after we are long gone, to be a machine for creating community. How does the coming and going of people have them bump into each other so they create opportunities for casual social interaction? How do they get familiar with each other? If you, I made this observation when I was on planning board looking at the Spark or Boulder Commons, one of those projects, and they were talking about building community. But the reality is in a project like that, and you see this in other housing projects, the way you come and go is you go into a car and you come into a parking garage and you go up a straw that takes you to your floor and you go to your unit. Where in that procession do you bump into your neighbor? Like, it doesn't happen. So you have to like go out of your room and go knock on the neighbor's door and be like, hi, I'm Brian. Your name is Andy. Should we have a beer or something? Like, what do we do? So I think the way we build these neighborhoods is, while we're not really, and I talk about it as community supportive, right? Like, how does community interaction inform all of our design moves? The reality is that most of what we do, often what we do, is actually so focused on economic efficiency. And this is not an economically inefficient project. I'm not saying that, but switching to a double loaded corridor would save a couple bucks. But it's also focused on privacy in a way that's isolating and alienating for everybody, regardless of whether you're neurodiverse or not, right? So next slide. Spreading different types of units around the site is really important. So you have a diversity of options for you wherever you're at. Next slide. Having rich common amenities, like you mentioned it, Matt's project, which just like popped out of my head because it's what happens for me. Thank you. 7,000 square feet of common amenities. This doesn't have that much, but it's a smaller project. So this is what was originally sort of put in the design with input from the neighbors or from the advocacy groups, parents, Kristen, other experts, Desiree. In the co-housing world, there's a huge amount of effort that goes into building community before you design, before you construct the building. So that's one of the big pieces that Kristen and Amanda really supported throughout, reaching out to tons of experts, reaching out to parents who are the best experts of anybody on this stuff and asking them what they want. And then our goal is to try to do that thing. That's how we, as designers, sidestep the conventional thinking that often limits city officials, policymakers, and commercial developers, professional development teams, right? But we're still subject to reality. So next slide. So this is the more value engineered version of it. That's a little bit smaller. Rooms got consolidated. So I think there's some things in here that if you ask my work partner, Kristen, not Kristen Heiser, Kristen Mito, there's a few things in here that she's like, oh man, I really wish we could have gotten that, or wish we could have gotten that other thing. And Kristen, I'm sure, has the same list. It's still a robust common house that is the first thing you see on the way home. And it's the thing that will come through when you go to your home, right? So it's like the doorknob to the house. You have to go through that to get to anywhere else. And that's what activates those spaces. If you see a typical kind of double loaded corridor apartment building with like a common space up in the far corner, and you're going to like leave floor 1 and go up the elevator and go down floor 3 and around the corner and go into the common room, that's not very plausible, right? But if you come in and you're like, oh, Kendra's there, I'm going to say hi to Kendra. And then like you're talking to Kendra. Like that is how community gets built. So next slide. And the units, floor plans, there's a lot to talk about in this in terms of designing for people with IDD. And some of it's in like basic accessibility measures, floor clearances for maneuverability, bathrooms that are big enough for a caretaker to help out. Having laundry in the unit is really important to people. One of the communities that I will show a little bit later is the person who really ran that process. said that having a loop inside the unit is really important for people who pace. She says like our guys pace all the time, so that helps them out a lot. So, but the great thing about these units and the units that we've been working on in other projects is you don't have to, they don't feel weird. You know, it's not like, you know, if you aren't experiencing IDD, you've moved into some weird unit that doesn't work for you. It's actually fine. It's perfectly acceptable. So that means from a pro forma and a balancing your community perspective, you don't have to dedicate unit by unit. You know, the federal law will say, you know, type B units are what you have, which means that they are adaptable and can become type A units. And type A units are fully accessible units, right? So that's your two options. But within that, it doesn't have to feel weird. So
Can I ask one more question? So it seems like many, if not all of the units are exterior loaded, not corridor loaded. Can you talk through that conversation?
Yeah, so that's I think a really key thing. I mean, you'll see like sort of out of the front door, there's that gray box right at the bottom. That's the walkway system. And so right outside of your unit, out of your place, you have a lot of openness, a lot of daylight, a lot of visibility into the commons, right? You can see, is something going on up there? And I want to be a part of it, so I'll go down and do it. That's the invitation that I think, you know, when you have a courtyard-oriented project, you can really make a lot out of. That little cafe table is a place where you could, like, without bumping into neighbors or without like, being invited to, you could just go sit out there with your plants, with your stuff, and hang out outside overlooking the green. Everyone comes and goes along that exterior walkway system, right? And so people bump into each other along there too. And you'll see in co-housing communities all the time, you'll walk by somebody's window and they'll flag you down and be like, hey, come in and have a drink. Like, I need to talk to you about that thing. So it happens, like the life of co-housing projects is in the walkways, in the outdoor spaces, community oriented comings and goings of it.
So I feel like it's just increased visibility compared to a corridor.
Absolutely. And you know, you get 2 slates of daylight, which is also really wonderful. So I think there's a huge community generator of that. There's also a little bit of a shell game that goes along with some of the LIHTC floor area analysis. If it's exterior loaded walkways, then they're not part of your interior space. So they're not part of the basis of it, I guess. So probably Kristen and you, Lauren, know way more about that than I do. I just tend to talk about it a little bit. So we can tap through the next few slides here and just a few units. And I'll share this stuff with you guys. It's all on our website. So we can go for a few here. But we have, you know, 1 and 2 bedroom units, 2 different options for them. You know, one of the things like with this particular unit that was really important is up on that sort of the left-hand image in the top right of that one. You can see there's like sort of an ensuite setup. So there's like a bedroom and an ensuite bathroom and an ensuite closet. So that would be originally conceived of as a place where a caretaker could kind of like be in the unit with the person they're taking care of, but have their own little like space, right? I think that's one of the things that helps you not burn through your caretakers is having like a sense of privacy and a sense of like, okay, cool. I can like chill out in here and I'm just gonna take a little break. And having a balcony off the back would also be a really huge benefit from that, which was once in the design, but is not in the design anymore because of value engineering realities. So.
Yes, I just to throw something in at the 30 Pro project that we were only granted two bedrooms and they had half baths for the caregivers. So it really was an issue.
Yeah, and in terms of housing needs, I think, you know, what we're seeing on this and other projects, and I think there's a bunch of people who are working on this all around the country, right? And everyone's sharing ideas. There's these summits, there's conferences, there's people putting together white papers, CHAFA, IHC, all these great resources. So, but I think we're all learning together. And what we're hearing is, you know, there could be some, you know, real cooperative style, you know, almost like SRO style housing. There could be 1 bedrooms. There's more desire for 2 bedrooms, either for like 2 people who can live independently and be roommates, or for somebody who needs a caregiver. There's another housing option, which we weren't able to fit into this, which is guest rooms where people can come and stay. And from what you guys have said to me in the past, like the ability for a parent to sort of move in for a week, get their kids settled, and then phase out would be really great, right? So that's the kind of thing that having those guest rooms would afford. Or if your kid's facing a bunch of challenges, you can come and be like, okay, cool, I'm gonna stay in this, you know, guest room for a week, hang out with them, make sure things are okay. That was a big crisis, but now it seems like we're through it and we can get out of their hair a little bit more and give them the kind of autonomy, agency, and independence that they really crave, because, you know, everyone wants that. So these are just a few renderings, and I would say like, we got to beat up a little bit on the architectural aesthetics as well. I think it's a good project, but there's a few things in there that are probably like responses to volunteer board members offering their suggestions for architectural aesthetics, which I'll say is not always my favorite thing to have to deal with. Yeah. Okay. So next slide. That image is of a common house. So we've got like sort of like housey feeling things on the east side, and then more of the apartment building feeling thing on the west side. But it's really got that central courtyard facing out over the green. Next slide. Next slide. And there's that central courtyard. Next slide. I mean, one of the main things with the sort of central courtyard design is that you have a place you can be outside, immediately outside your unit, right? So if you're on the ground level, you got a little garden space. If you're on the upper level, you got that little cafe table space. So you can just like automatically chill out right outside your place if you're sort of like, I'm available for conversation. So, so this is another project I'll just talk about really quickly. Cedar Root. This is one that, the Grove is, Boulder Housing or Broomfield Housing Alliance is the client. They're the developer with Blue Line. Danute's building it. It's LIHTC funded. So it really goes through the entire set of constraints and benefits of that kind of a process, right? So there's a lot of really good things about it. You have a developer who has got their heart in the right place. You got people like Kristen and Amanda who are saying, we want you to do the right thing for the people who we're trying to serve. Not all of our developer clients would say a sentence like that. So this one is a little bit more on the Andy and Connie model. It's parents who are acquiring land and developing a project themselves without LIHTC money, without federal subsidies, without state subsidies. They're just doing it. And so we've put together this sort of like architectural character board. These are not images of actually what we'll do. This is sort of like the vibe of the place that everyone's sort of coalescing around. On the site plan on the right, there's the main road, 38th is 38th. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, 38th is, and this is in Wheat Ridge, sort of the high point of the site. And the whole site slopes down to the south, bottom of the page. All of the green area that's got nothing in it is floodplain and agricultural land. We're partnering with the Denver Botanical Gardens to do like a demonstration garden and like ongoing agricultural effort there. That sort of dark green line that follows the road through there is an old ditch. That's a barrier to development. And then we've developed it in 4 pockets. So right up against the road, right behind where you guys can see Kristen in the room, is the building, which is going to be sort of a commercial educational building. And that is going to be where the nonprofit that all these parents are involved with hosts their sort of nature engagement and educational programs. Parking lot right behind that is also going to be the primary parking lot for all the residences. So we're working towards as much of a car-free community as possible. So all of these roads that you see south of there are going to be very infrequently used by cars, right? So it's as safe as possible. And then there's sort of 3 precincts. There's like one kind of like right below that, the left corner and the south piece, right? So you kind of see that we've got townhomes and flats opening up around common greens. The lowest pocket that's in the sort of southernmost piece of the site is all single family, but their code allows us to do attached ADUs, attached dwelling units. So we're creating a unit type that's got like a 2-bedroom main floor. The garage kind of creates a barrier between that unit and the adjacent ADU. And the ADU is designed to be a caretaker unit. Could be for that house, could be for somewhere else. So I feel like we've got some really cool things happening on this project, and we're in the early entitlement process right now. So I still have stars in my eyes. Next slide. So some of the stuff we've learned in terms of design, I think I'll try to focus on stuff that is relevant to you guys. There is a lot of stuff. There's a ton about this online and great resources. I should include IHC on this list at the bottom, but my office put together at the very bottom, there's a Designing for Adults with IDD blog post that we put together a little while back, maybe a few years ago, that it was really meant for like kind of audiences like this. Like, okay, you need to get up to speed on this pretty quickly. Here's what we think that you need to know, and here's a bunch of resources. So, I mean, designing in my world, sort of designing for the neuro and diverse community is just like everybody else. You meet with them, you ask them what they want, and then you try to do that thing. But it's really focused on, people-centered, human-scaled, social connection-oriented design work. Sensory-friendly environments, wayfinding is really key. Universal design and accessibility are really key. And I do really believe that the participatory process is a magical thing. After running the workshops for Wild Sage 20-something years ago, I remember seeing people walk around the neighborhood after it was built, showing their parents around, being like, I got to design this. Can you believe it? And as an architect, I know they made 1 to 3% of the decisions that were available on the site. But the level of emotional buy-in and sense of belonging and sense of self-determination, that's worth gold. So yeah, next slide. So there's a bunch of landscape site planning pieces, including, being clear about wayfinding, how you get around the site, the fact that when you get around the site, it creates community or not, sensory gardens, meditation paths, play activities for adults or kids. Next slide. Parking and transportation are a big key. Car ownership and driving, of course, is a smaller percentage of the population for folks with experience in IDD. So access to transit and having a clear pickup and drop off situation is really key. Next. Accessibility, of course, I kind of flip through that stuff pretty quickly, but we all know those things. So next. Safety, super clear. I think there's a really interesting, most of the parts that we do, we're creating a sense of safety within them by having perceptual boundaries at the perimeters, right? So you don't really walk into the project without being like, oh, I've gone into something. There are groups of people, I would say, or styles of communities where that level of perceptual barrier is appropriate. I think when you have people who are experiencing different varieties of IDD, gate controlled, secure spaces are going to be important for certain people too, right? So that's also a reality. Next slide. So you guys heard about Bluebell and Pearl. This is one that is operating here, and BHP developed that. And I just kind of include this slide because I know you guys will refer to it. Next. This is a really interesting one. This was another group of parents who got together to design, what was the least expensive, most practical way to house our kids. And it was initially little duplexes. And the idea was that parents would live in half and the kids would live in the other half. And eventually most of the parents just actually they came clean that they weren't actually interested in moving in. They were like, we would like our kids to be in a place that's safe, but we actually have been carrying quite a load for a long time. And we don't want to carry it up forever. So, and I think that's a very delicate and vulnerable and real thing to say, right? I've talked to a lot of parents who are like, frankly, man, I didn't sign up for all this. This has been tough for me. So they've got a common house in the middle. It's got a lot of great community space in there, including the sort of housing of the office for the nonprofit. But now each one of those duplexes has got younger resident. They're pretty much all singles. They pretty much all have a little loft in the back. And the ones that I toured, each one has its own theme, which is kind of this interesting thing. I don't think it was ever really an intentional thing, but it's sort of become part of the way people occupy their homes. So one guy loves trains. So everything's about trains. And so I went in there and had this great long conversation about trains. And I was like, oh, have you ever ridden the Cumberson Toltec? And what about the Durango to Silverton? And he was like, oh my God. So we got this huge, awesome, geeky train conversation going. And his bed is made like a Pullman cart. It's really cool. I'm super stoked on that stuff. And the next person was really into Matchbox cars. So he had a billion of those. And the next person was into Disney. And so I was like, each one of these homes has become this expression of this person's reality and their affinities. And it was so beautiful. I loved it. But they all open up onto a green. Right outside every unit is a stock tank. That's a stainless steel stock tank full of plants. So people can grow stuff if they want to. The other invitation that comes with that is if you aren't up to doing it, then you get a buddy who helps you out with it. So there's really interesting community building that happens there too. Okay, next slide.
Oh, excuse me, is that 35 dwelling units on 1.2 something acres?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and the parking's off the side, just like a conventional co-housing project. This one is gated because they felt like there was a real need for that. And she says that's been super important. So they do have a bunch of young people who wander. And this community, I'd say, is of the ones I've visited, has a very broad spectrum of people's abilities. So there are people who are not physically mobile, not verbal, all the way to people who are like getting on the bus and going to work and having a job. So, but it is like really all IDD, except for the one mom who was a spearhead who moved in there. And she's like, okay, I'm doing it. And she's unbelievable. So yeah, next slide. This is a straight up co-housing project that has been designed to be neuro-inclusive as well. And actually they say really inclusive of everybody. They're like, why limit it to like neuro-inclusivity? It's like LGBTQ inclusive. It's like inclusive. It's everybody should be here, right? They've had a hell of a road and they're kicking it back up in Portland right now to try to get this thing built. So it's had some challenges, but that's sort of the pandemic. And, you know, I mean, for those of you who are not involved with getting these things built, it's not easy. Just to get something built at all requires not just a clever architect or a hab that likes the idea. It needs a whole series of things to come together before any of this stuff happens. And so I really feel like from a hab and city council perspective, I think two things. Like one is that perfect is the enemy of the good. You know, if we're looking for an ideal solution all the time, it's 1,200 people who are living in Boulder County are not going to have a place to live. And also, like, if you think, oh, it's got to be 30 units or 20 units, well, what if it's 12? What if it's 83? There's a way of doing these projects at every scale, and we need to be doing all of them. Next slide. I don't know if there's anything else. Yeah, cool. That's it. Whew.
Yeah.
You guys asked me to speak for like 90 minutes. I think I did it.
That's really helpful. I think I've
You can close that stuff. We don't need it.
okay. You don't want to look at yourself.
I do that at home in the mirror all the time. Kristen, did you want to add anything to that? Or Tim?
No, that was great.
I was just gonna say I am like policy wonk. I like live in policy world, and when I've attended these community engagement events to hear the self-advocates talk about needs and desires in the space, I get super overwhelmed. I'm like, how do you do all this in just like one space? So seeing these examples really helps like shed light on the fact that it is possible and not limited by my little wonky mind over here. So it's great to see these examples. It's cool.
Yeah, I think there's a genius to getting people together on the community engagement side that is, I think, people don't really kind of understand it. When I go into a co-housing, I've done a bunch of co-housing projects, done a lot of affordable housing projects. If you didn't tell me anything else, I think I'd probably do an all right job, right? But when I go into these workshops, I come out with different ideas than I went in with, right? Like, so even as an experienced design professional, right? If you do this right, you are changed by the process and you learn through the process, and the outcomes are different and they suit the people better than if I sat in my little room by myself, like sketching away, right? So I think community engagement it's got to be an open-hearted thing. I will say back in the earlier days of the city starting to talk more seriously about community engagement, when I was on planning board, we had a presentation. I think it was planning staff at that time. I know we're being recorded. I'm risking throwing people into the bus a little bit here, I guess. I'll take my risks. And the people who put together this proposal, like they were like, okay, what are you going to do? And they're like, okay, well, here's our agenda. Here's how we're going to do it. Here's what we're going to do. And it's like, so you have a 55-minute presentation. You have 5 minutes left for Q&A. That's like the opposite proportion for community engagement, right? That is not community engagement. That is a presentation with a Q&A. You really, if you're going to do community engagement, it's 5 minutes of setup and 55 minutes of talking to people and really hearing from them, listening. So I think the city's come miles and miles from that perspective over the past decade and a half. So I think the progress is really tangible.
in the community engagement, do you ever feel like there's like a risk, like over promising? That's something we were taught, we were like, it's like in our heads from the city is like meaningfully engagement, only do it if you're gonna take these considerations. Do you ever feel like there's like an over promise?
Yes, there's a risk of that. I think, I mean, partially, I mean, we all want to please people, right? I mean, not all of us, but most of us want to please people. And so there's a human desire to do that and to be like, oh yeah, we'll be whatever you want. I see that expressed in our co-housing groups because they're trying to sell units, they're self-developed, they're trying to appeal to people. So they're like, oh yeah, we'll be that, we'll be this, we'll be that. And what I tell them is that, you know, from their perspective, you need to be, if you ask most people to say, and you say like, what are your priorities, right? Most Americans, they'll give you a list of like 500 things, which means you don't have any priorities. If you have priorities, there's like 1 or 2 or 3 of them, right? That's what priorities mean. So you got to understand what's in your box. And I think, you know, for a project like you guys, it's like we're doing community-oriented, neuro-inclusive housing. That's what you get. You can't be like, oh, we're also going to have, you know, a form-based code and, you know, like all that stuff just dilutes the ability to get anything done. And then I think the other part of the overpromising piece is being really clear about what you are asking and when you're asking it and what input you're seeking. I forget the matrix, Kristen's probably got it memorized too, but like when you're asking people for input is different when you're just informing them. And so it's really, really, when I'm facilitating these workshops, I'm very, very clear, you know, this is what I'm being told by the city. We're going to be following these rules. You like them or not, but we're going to be following. This is the deal. And here's some stuff that we're going to do basically without asking you because we know what we're doing. You've hired us because we're good at this stuff. Here's the stuff I really, really want to hear from you on. And we're going to do what you ask us to do on this stuff. So you have to ask them for input on something that you're willing to listen to them on. You know, if you're not going to do it, make it part of the informational part.
Yeah, I think as a developer,
yeah,
just being as transparent as possible on what you can actually still change is really important. Because you can't be flexible on a lot of things, right? Due to costs, due to regulations, due to so many things.
Mm-hmm. And I would say, like with our co-housing groups, since they're self-developed and they're paying for this along the way and they're going to be the buyers and going to live there, we're putting them in the position of understanding the trade-offs. Like, so if the site could fit 42 units, but somebody's like, oh, I really think it should only be 24. Like, cool. So the site development costs, the land costs, and the cost of the common facilities for each unit just doubled, right? So instead of it being 50,000, it's 100,000. Do you really want your home to go up by $50,000 to just have 24 instead of 42? No? Cool. We'll go back to 42. So I think, you know, you just have to give them some agency in that and also give them enough of an education.
Common sense.
Yeah, like just put it out in a way that like really is clear and true. We're really like searching for truth here, right? Like these are real, true things. And if you can put it to people and allow them to make a decision, they do a great job.
I have a question for the entire panel. Are we at that point yet? Are we still on Brian?
I think we're
I
not
have
on
a
me.
question for Brian.
Okay.
So one of the things that as we're exploring in our circumstances is the question of where land. And, you know, we've talked a lot about community and how that connects to the architecture that's within the boundaries of what you decide. But in Boulder, you know, okay, there's talk about, you know, stuff way out there on the top end of 28th or, you know, way out on Iris or where that's away from the center of the town. And I think, you know, especially we talk about this is a population that doesn't generally, not a lot of drivers. And so walkability and access to community service, you know, like whether it's a grocery store or the rec center or whatever, how is that problem solved in the development process?
Yeah, I think, and that's a really interesting question. I think there's a policy component to it where if the city of Boulder, which has been in our comp plan for 20 years at least, and is happening more and more in the, I forget the name of the process that just finished about a year ago, but like the zoning for affordability, I got renamed something else.
Vibrant neighborhoods.
Vibrant neighborhoods, thank you. Like that made huge progress. The state laws made huge progress, but like really what needs to happen is like from a policy perspective, the city needs to be able to say like, it's important to us to make this land that's available, that has transit available to it, available to people who need it. This is a value we have, right? And you can line those things up. That's not hard to figure out. So that's the policy level. You know, we're just left here shopping for land together, trying to figure out where we're gonna do a project. And you know, in the city of Boulder, a lot of that now means like redevelopment, right? Not development. We don't have a lot of green land to work with. So how do we find a piece of property that, this is the challenge for us from a kind of like resident and consumer perspective, right? From a policy viewpoint, you know, is there a piece of property that we can get that's big enough to have a community on, that's got access to transit? And actually, those are really the two things. That's like almost all it is right now. Well, the third one is like that you can get it through a approval process. And so if there's something that's built into the zoning code that would, or from a policy perspective, if there was an incentive or money or ability to give groups like Andy and Connie are trying to put together here with Trailhead, a leg up on commercial buyers, right? So automatically you would get a density bonus. Automatically you would get faster through the approval process. And those things have to be automatic. They can't be some kind of like slow, horrible discretionary review process, because that puts them at a disadvantage to people who don't care about that, right? So this is true for affordable housing as well. Like if you guys can set it up so that people you're trying to support are able to say like, okay, cool, for me, this land is worth a little bit more than it would be to a commercial developer because I can put more on it. Some of the policy pieces that are behind that are, you know, looking at density in terms of floor area ratio. This is something you should be supporting in the new land use code, as opposed to DU per acre or lot area per DU, which is just the inverse of that. Because that means that the bigger the DU, the better your pro forma works. That's giving an advantage to the people who have the most wealthy buyers. So our current land use code advantages the most wealthy buyers possible and disadvantages everybody else. That's a policy level thing that we could reverse.
Brian, I would add in terms of the things that we're looking for us, walkability, and a lot of the parents we're talking to is super important, not just access to buses.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think if it could be, I mean, Washington Village, right, would be a perfect location for this kind of property, right? If we'd known about it a decade and a half ago. Close to Ideal Market, close to, all this stuff, close to here. So church properties, school properties, city properties that they're going to get rid of. Who knows?
What about commercial office space?
Thank you.
I think so.
Well, one of the,
I mean, it's a serious question. I understand this is a special demographic with special needs. Is that something that could be workable? Because when you talk about walkability and accessibility to services, I think there is a lot of empty, cheap commercial real estate. Obviously, you can't just stick people in there overnight. You got to do something to it. But is that something that could be, worked out for this?
You're saying take it down and resign something?
No, not necessarily implode the building, but like obviously modify it.
Yeah, I mean, the ideal thing would be to take, the second floor of retail space along Pearl Street and, combine a bunch of second floor levels and create a community out of that. And I think you would be able to, have egress off the front and egress off the back. You'd have to work through the downtown urban design guidelines to get window patterning and stuff like that to work. And there are barriers in the land use code to that, in the use tables. There's also really serious barriers in the building code. In the way the city views conversion of commercial space to residential is a change of use. Change of use triggers everything. So you automatically have to fire sprinkle. You have to insulate to current standards. You got to meet energy codes. You got to meet all of the site lighting, site development, everything, right? So you basically have to take something that like is very much not going to comply with all those rules and pay the money to make it comply with all those rules. And we've done some of the stuff around the country.
I
But
mean,
it's tough.
do you guys ever feel like when looking at the city of Boulder's land use regulations, building codes, that some of it could have a disparate impact on people with intellectual and developmental disabilities?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think, our preponderance of single family homes is probably item number one, right? Like, and the fact that we've worked so hard to protect that.
But I'm looking more not how the city's developed, but if you're wanting to develop something in a certain way that would accommodate people with disabilities, and the building codes are saying no, like you talked about, windows have to be certain. That doesn't perhaps work for this crowd. I mean, that's sort of like ADA stuff. Do you feel like there's an issue with the building codes in Boulder that makes it, setting aside the economics of everything, but that makes it difficult to build housing that accommodates people with intellectual and developmental disabilities?
From a kind of nuts and bolts perspective, I would say no. I think if you're doing a new project, it's, the differences between IDD population and the neurotypical population, there's not really like a building code or zoning piece if you're doing a ground up project, right? So if you're doing Bluebell, they probably didn't bump into these kinds of problems. But I do think on the building conversion side, there's a bunch of barriers, which would be true for apartments as well as else. But I think, when you're working with, clever housing typologies, whether it's like, the city's code still has a boarding house section in it, but now that we don't have occupancy limits, you can do cooperative housing. So we do a lot of cooperative housing, also on the board of the Better Housing Colorado group, which was formerly known as Boulder Housing Coalition. So we run all the affordable co-ops here in town. And so if you have an opportunity like one of those spaces, the way to figure it out is to look at it and be like, okay, what's the most suitable thing to this space and to this site and this location? And some of the 1,200 people who are trying to serve in Boulder County would be happy to be there. Is it going to work for everybody? Nope, don't care. It's really got to be like, this opportunity can afford this outcome for these people, and let's just do that one. Like you guys have said before, the need is infinite. And there is no one size fits all to all this stuff. So it's not like you'd be like, oh, they all got to be exactly the same. So I think like a second story, Pearl or Pearl adjacent commercial rehab into housing for IDD would be totally brilliant.
We wouldn't have the same challenges we do with going into single family, like some of the properties looking at are single family areas, and then we have to get the zoning change to multi, and you wouldn't have that issue, so.
Yeah, and I will tell you that from feedback from other people who've been trying to get stuff like this entitled different places, like that Cathedral Park group up in Portland, they faced a lot of discrimination. Aside from the sort of normal stuff we see with affordable housing, with multifamily first, then multifamily affordable, then multifamily affordable for IDD, like, oh my God, and so people say astoundingly, shockingly rotten things.
NIMBY.
Kristen, do you want to chime in on that? It's your mic. No. Yeah.
I can ask my question.
You can ask your question.
I guess I'm curious, how important is it to have a champion? So I was really impressed with Trilliad, the woman, the story, who's the force behind that, how inspirational she was. And would that project have happened without her? And how important is it for these other projects that have been successful, or is it part of a determinant of success?
Yeah, it's absolutely crucial. It's the thing that we found in this is talking to Wellspring down in Douglas County, which also is functioning, is you need to have sort of the visionary or the parents and say, this is, it's to be, it's up to me. And they'll make that happen. And the other connection is with the spiritual or faith community. But yeah, the other thing I would talk about, and this is, speaking from PTSD, I designed the shelter 20 plus years ago, is that you have to have a council member that is a champion. And, you know, for us, it was Will Tour. And then that baton got passed to Mark Russin. And so, yeah, it's absolutely crucial to have champions on serious levels, because we got the $500,000 Rockies rebate. Not many people know this, but Jerry Lee, who did One Boulder Plaza, took all of his profits from that project and gave it to the homeless shelter, right? He didn't talk about it, but there were people who championed it within the business community, et cetera. And it's really what Brian's talking about, is it has to be championed at all levels, like HAB, Boulder Planning, City Council, Boulder Housing Partners. And it's this thing, and we have people from all over the United States coming in to see our project because we made it happen. You know, it was one woman with parents making it happen. So people are like, how did you do that? Lots of people talking about it. Some people are in construction, but you've done it. And what it's really about is absolutely, planting your flag in the ground and saying it's going to happen.
And every time we say if,
yeah,
Matt says when. So
I played a game when we designed the homeless shelter, and people told me there's no way in hell you're going to make it happen. And I said, not only will I invite you to the groundbreaking, I'll invite you to the ribbon cutting and give you a personal tour. Right? In 20 plus years it's there. And its function has changed a little bit over the years. Really was the biggest part was transitional housing, you know, and then it moved to a housing first model. But I mean, I commend Andy and Connie for being the people who are taking the stand to say this is going to happen in Boulder. So.
Tim's got his hand up.
Hey, thanks. I just want to comment on that a little bit. It is important to have a champion, and you know, I knew Barb, and she was certainly a champion of that project. But it also took 10 years of her life, and you can't have every project take 10 years. And so, while yes, you do have to have the champions, it really needs to be champions at a community level too, and neuro-inclusive housing has to become more of the norm and not just the thing that, you know, people point to and say, hey, that one big example is really great. It has to be more normalized. So, and then you wouldn't need, you know, as much of the, you wouldn't need to find the champions to do it to the level that you needed to for Trailhead. So I would just offer that as a thought as well.
I was going to just say one thing about economics. Like everything that Brian said, I'm an architect. One thing I would say about what Brian said, and this is, you know, having got my master's in real estate development, you know, MBA in real estate as well too, is that Brian, you had made a comment about economics aside, and I would say absolutely you can't say that. It has to be about economics because you have to understand the time value of money. And while you're sitting waiting for things to go through entitlement, the clock is running, interest is burning. And if you look, we had this conversation with Kurt of there's not as much funding there because projects are not happening in Boulder. And really that's a function of interest rates, but it's also a function of the time that it takes to get through the entitlement process. And so that's one of the things that I understood when I went back and got my master's, not only in architecture, but got my master's in real estate development, was that without the money, no project happens. It's just these series of unbuilt projects that show up in architectural record and on websites, and you feel good about it, but it's all about making the project happen. And so that's why working with Brian, we're going to bring those two things together. Is how do you bring the people in who have the hard story with it, who have the money, not only from personal donors, but also investment capital, and then match that up with beautiful architecture that creates culture. And like then Tim said, then it becomes the norm, because the more people, like we're walking Jeffco commissioners through there tomorrow. Everybody from Boulder's been down, state senators have been down, everybody's seen it. And so working with Tim, the IHC and the Alliance and all the folks trying to change it on a legislative side, but also just having it where people can walk through and go, oh, great, this is awesome. We want this in our community. So, yeah, I mean, I'm excited about working with you, man. Yeah.
Well, and just to comment on Tim's comment about it took 10 years for Barbara to get there.
the sad reality is that she didn't live to see it happen and open up.
Yeah, she passed away a month before we opened. That's the very sad story. The great story is her daughter, Lexi, lives there. So what everyone talks about over age 60, what happens if I wake up and I'm not there? Barb is able to solve that problem. So
Kristen.
I just wanted to, I know this is the Housing Advisory Board and it's about the construction of housing, but I think a key thing is to find, because at the end of the day, BHA is going to we're going to develop and own housing, but we can't do this work without our service providers. And one of the things that we're also doing is a lot of the individuals that will be moving into the Grove have never lived independently. So we have 2 agencies in town that are running consecutively independent living academies where they are hosting for the past year, 2 times a month. They have 2 tracks. They have one for individuals who are learning the skills to live independently, and they actually have a parent track because there's a whole piece to this about parents getting ready to be empty nesters. I mean, a lot of them have been, their people have been with them for 60 years, 65 years. And it's, we might experience it sending kids off to college or whatever, but it's something similar. So there's a lot of really intentional coordinated work that's happening in our community to get our future residents and their families ready to go so they're successful. And I would just say some of those families too are deciding that they're not really ready for this. So some of our biggest champions are coming to that realization. And so it kind of goes back to the conversation about we can't be all things to all people. This is independent living, and you have to have those tough conversations, and families have to have tough conversations in their own homes to decide if they're ready for this or not. So it's about bricks and mortar, it's about money, but it's also just extremely emotional. And you got to be ready for that too, because that's a big part of this is kind of the emotional ride that everybody experiences going through this process.
So I have a question. Our mandate as a board is twofold: to advise city council on how it can change the law or write new laws, and then also to advise the city manager on how it can differently execute current laws. What would you want to see changed about our current laws, or what would you want to be seen changed about how the city executes to make housing more accessible to people with intellectual and developmental disabilities?
I just read through the whole BRC in the last 3 days. So yeah, I mean, that was exciting. But yeah, I would second what Brian says. It's about density. It's about prioritization, not only from a location, but as a strategy. Like when the shelter happened, it was going to happen, and it was top down. And then staff understood that it was a top down. And so everybody, I mean, it was the most pleasant experience that I had working in Boulder, where everybody was all rowing in the same direction. But yeah, I think you don't want to run into densification, right? Because that's the dirty word, and Michael knows that from being on ULI all those years. But really it has to be some sort of a strategic retreat thing, that it becomes a priority and goes from the BVCP all the way down into the BRC, into the code.
Yeah, I mean, really, like at a basic level, everybody who's building in Boulder faces a lot of challenges working with the city on site review, tech docs, especially building permitting processes. I mean, still really kind of unforgivably painful. Honestly, it's very difficult to get anything built here, regardless of what you're doing. Just being a little candid with you guys on that. Luckily that's not Hab's problem, but you can say stuff to other people. The interpretation of current laws and creation of new laws piece, I think, to me, I feel like the interesting part of that and the kind of most useful part is like, how do you essentially sort of invite the things you're trying to get to happen? And this history of the city is like, there's always this sort of like, there's a new thing, we're excited about that, we're gonna like focus on it, there'll be a work plan item, and then we'll create some rules for it. But what that means is like the thing that you looked at automatically gets saddled with a whole bunch of additional rules, more than everything else. So if you're like, the first round of like the co-op ordinance and ADUs and all these things, right, that we all sat through, we make the thing that we're trying to support the hardest thing to do with that kind of policy work. So how do we make it the easiest thing to do to build the kind of things that you guys want us to build, right? So like, if you have, people like Kristen or Tim, or Andy and Connie, these like heartfelt, burning souls who are trying to change the world for really great reasons. If that's the only way that you can get these things built, that's not great. What a great world would it be if you had the regular like local scumbag developer dude be like, the easiest thing to get built is IDD housing. I'm going to do that, and then you have a way of making sure that it's actually a good thing, right? Like you have enough regulatory oversight that they're doing the right things. But what if it wasn't just the result of people who like have the time and money and family?
I was going to tag on to that. So we did a project, a 9-unit affordable housing project in Lyons, where my client came to me at a 1031 exchange going into a property, and we made it through planning commission and town board of trustees in a month at Christmas time, and I know it's Lyons, but it was an absolute vision that they knew that they needed more affordable housing in town, specifically for workers in town. And Holly Brogan, Paulson Williams, and all those folks on town board of trustees made it happen and followed their process, but it was expedited and clean, and it's up and running and fully leased up. So
Here's a challenge for y'all.
there you go. Yeah, and 2 months, maybe, in Boulder.
And I'm working in jurisdictions around the country, right? And some of them are very difficult, like Telluride and Aspen and places like that. But some of them, like Bellingham, Washington, which is the same size city, equally as precious and exposed to natural beauty as Boulder, right? It's a very good corollary. Here in Boulder, we have a 700 billion page form-based code that tells you where to put the crease in the building. It's going to be 2¼ inches deep and not 2.5. Otherwise, you've got to ask for an exception, right? He's like extremely onerous, and I know that's not the way staff thinks about it over in planning, but that's kind of how it is. In Bellingham, the design guidelines that I had to follow were the building needs to have its primary entrances face the street. It needs to have a clear and coherent design idea, a single one, not 60 of them tucked together to pretend they're little houses stuck together. And it needs to address the public realm appropriately. I submitted, and I'm through the process, and it's a couple months for a 42-unit co-housing project, and it looks great. And honestly, it's probably the best project we've ever done. Do you want to know why? Because we didn't have to accommodate all these comments from people that didn't make sense, honestly. I hate to say it, but that's like just a very real thing. So, and there was an interesting discussion on the design. There was a discretionary review. There was a design conversation. One person was like, "Oh, the existing building school front has an arch on it. Maybe there should be arches everywhere." I was like, "No, I don't think that's a good idea." And the other people in the design review group were like, "Yeah, we don't think that's a good idea either." And I was like, "Okay, cool. We're just going to put that one to bed and next, right?" So it was like it was almost more like the way the city does the DAB process,
right?
The design advisory board, where like you're sitting around a table, you're talking through ideas, and it's less like, well, from the dais, I've got to create a condition that I apply to your project to make it better somehow here at the 11th hour,
I like your suggestion at some point in the conversation where you, pointed out that start at the BBCP and identify these things are by right.
Yes.
Because that will change everything. The developers can't come in by right. Because unless they're building these, right? Unless they're building 100% affordable or, these special needs.
And if they do, God bless them.
And if they are, cool,
Yeah.
but there's always like that little pivot here where, oh yeah, we're gonna do this, but we can only do it for 10%, or we can only do it for this. You're just like, and we don't have the means to get there, but we are redoing the BDCP, and we know that that trickles down to zoning, and that's been my number one in the process. Is like, they've got to translate. We can't have an ideal up here. Yes, we want diversity, 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 but we don't get diversity anywhere because exactly what you're talking about. I think we all need to go to Bellingham and witness the process. It's about trust. You know, the architect knows. I don't ever make a comment on planning board on other architects' work. It's just like, you know what? It's not my business to challenge your building, but I will talk about livability or experiential. You know, I'll just really, that 12-foot tall wall, 300 feet long is going to be a good experience. Explain that to me, that kind of thing. But no, that would be something to somehow bring back the idea that less is more.
So I have two comments in this regard. I think every member of our board attended the Better Boulder Chamber of Commerce joint event last week. And I made a comment at one point. I went into this group and all the developers and the architects were expressing similar grievances that there's too much red tape, everything moves too slowly, it's too expensive to build in Boulder. And people were saying it makes it very difficult to do low-income housing and smaller projects. You know, if you're doing a massive multi-million-dollar big profit project, then you can kind of bear the cost. But if you're trying to do something on a smaller scale that's more affordable, it's just not worth it. And I made a comment that, you know, I'm a lawyer, and a common grievance of our legal system has been that pretrial procedures just gotten too thorough, too complicated, and therefore too expensive. And the Colorado Supreme Court several years ago tried to address that by basically putting in place what's called simplified procedure for cases under $100,000. And it kind of axes a bunch of the procedural mechanisms that you would have in a case that's in excess of 100,000. And I sort of suggested, like, is there a way that we can sort of, you know, approval processes, regulatory processes to get permits and things built, if it's for certain types of projects, smaller scale projects, affordable housing, housing for people with disabilities, is there sort of a different track that can go on that's more streamlined and faster? And that can be used perhaps to prioritize certain housing types in our community.
So I think the state currently requires that jurisdictions are adopting fast tracks for affordable housing projects. And I'm not sure where the city is at with that right now, but
We have another year.
you have another year. Okay.
So the planning department is working on it. That is like on the.
So that's one comment. And then I think on a more practical note, our board has pretty limited power. We can send letters, but we can vote on it. And
you can word them sternly.
I gather if we agree, some people in positions with more power may listen to us. That's kind of how I interpret our powers. So, I mean, what is it that you would want us to do? Send a letter to the city manager saying what, or send a letter to city council saying what?
Well, we've talked to Aaron Brockett, and he says, you know, what you want to do is you're not trying to build $1 million, you know, fancy house for someone. You know, he'd be supportive of it. So
he said he's aware of the need, I mean, because, you know, I've told him, and he's seen the statistics. Yeah, and he was very encouraging. So
send a letter to him and CC others.
I think maybe one idea could be a joint session with city council and HAB, that either it could be a study session or it could be a publicly noticed tour of Trailhead, or something like that. That's a big ask for a bunch of people who are very busy, for sure. You guys included in that. I think, you know, Better Boulder has done a bunch of kind of almost like white papers talking about the comp plan or Area 3 or housing. And I think that tends to be from a board perspective, like a really heavy lift editorially, because you gotta like wordsmith and write together. And I know like for city boards, that can be really challenging. But I think, yeah, I mean, like writing a letter to city council. I mean, we always try to get in front of them, before their retreats, so it can be established as a priority during that process. Meeting with people individually helps a lot. But I think actually just taking does not take long to read the comp plan. It's not like reading Title IX or the Boulder Municipal Code. Like, so I think looking through the comp plan as it stands now, looking at the cities, because they've got like a really clear idea of how to compress land uses and some other stuff like that. They're moving in the process really nicely, but have to weigh in on the comp plan and say like, hey, and honestly, sometimes I feel like, again, on the less is more side, like the way to weigh in is like, hey, we just heard from a bunch of people how important neuro-inclusive housing is. We think this is important too. We would like to see city council find ways of supporting it in the comp plan. And then period, you've sent the letter, so it doesn't have to be, I guess it's the art of the achievable to me. Like, don't do anything if you can't write the PhD thesis. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
we're reviewing the draft comp plan in March. Okay.
I was just going to tag onto that too. When I was on UGID board for 10 years, the first 5 years we dealt with the riots in University Hill Action Group, but UGID had joint sessions with council, right? Because it was an emergency situation, cars were being tipped. And a lot of good stuff came out of that. The second 5 years was about the economic plan that would lay down how the Hill could be redeveloped to have it be a thriving economic center. And that was also a joint UGID city council session. And who was absolutely instrumental in that was Molly Winter. I don't know if you guys remember Molly.
Everyone, Molly.
Amazing woman. And Molly was very effective at bringing it to the city manager's attention and city council's attention simultaneously to have it, become a priority. So it's really kind of the board staff liaison to use their internal connections to reach out and just go, what you just said. We just heard from folks out in the community and at other communities and other organizations. And we really think it's a priority. We'd love to talk with you individually and see if we can work it into a joint session. Yeah.
Honestly, I feel like a cause like this is, what could be more aligned with HAB, honestly, finding a housing need and helping the city to direct energy to solve it. That's kind of what this was in the beginning, still is.
Anything else online or in person?
Thank you for listening.
Yeah.
We really appreciate that you took this long evening to talk about this issue. When you were saying you were going to end early. So thank you so much.
You haven't got the rest of it yet.
Can I just say, it's been really helpful for me. Throughout this process, the idea of the intentional community has been really hard for me to like, what does that mean? And between Andy, your remarks, and then the actual pictures and discussion of how design can make that happen, it's it has settled with me on what this can actually mean. So this has been really helpful. I hope for everyone here on HAB, but it's been really helpful for me to make it feel more tangible. So thanks. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And that's another idea, actually. There could be a tour of Wild Sage and Silver Sage, which are really good examples of for sale, new urbanist development with 40% affordable housing, including habitat homes. So down 30-60% AMI range. And we could talk about how that's applicable to this kind of idea. It's not exactly what you would do,
And it's 5 minutes from here instead of.
Yeah, not to go quite as far. So that's an open invitation.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank
all
you.
So much.
Thank you guys for being on the board. I know it's a bunch of work. And luckily you get famous and rich by doing it.
At least dinner.
At least dinner.
Right.
Thank you for that too.
So you guys are welcome to stay.
Well, thank you for the
Yeah.
opportunity.
Thank
See
you.
you all around. Bye.
See you guys later. How much more of your board meeting is there?
2 minutes.
Okay, cool.
Well, I don't know about that.
Impressive.
We're gonna, yeah, we just gotta like.
I'll take me and all my comments out of here. Shoot.
I wanna,
Will.
yeah, I think it's.
Yeah, is it really close here?
Yeah.
Here? Yeah.
No.
We'll talk about it.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Meet you in person.
See you, man.
All right. My brain's full. All right, so next on the agenda is the HAB member quarterly update to council, which I volunteered to do, but I did not send you the draft yet. I'm sorry, but I can do that actually this evening. We can take a look at it. And also see if we want to like really shift gears from actually what my draft was after learning information from tonight. So
You should definitely add in a couple sentences from tonight.
Yeah.
And we can vote on it in February.
yeah. So I'll send a draft. Excuse me. Work plan review. Did everybody get a chance to look at the work plan? And I guess a part of my question was there anything in particular that we needed to add to this list? You see that there's the, what do we have coming up? I should put my glasses on.
So February is, we're doing an affordable housing review with city council, March 5th, and we'll do a preview with you guys. It's a February meeting, so Holly will be back. I think it'll be, unfortunately, the new members won't be here, but it's just going to be an overview of all things affordable housing. And planning board will get it too, March 3rd.
But is it, so is it, when are the board appointments?
Interviews are next week.
Yeah.
Appointments happen March
5th.
5th.
March, oh, okay. Nice. So we are just missing it.
Yeah, so we typically invite our new appointees to come to our meetings since our meeting's at the end of the month,
Right.
but they won't be sworn in until the April meeting typically,
Okay.
unless the board decides, I guess. I don't know if that's.
When are the applications available to us to review?
Staff hasn't been
We don't
given
know,
it, so
okay.
application closed on Sunday.
Okay.
So city clerks are compiling all of the applications.
Okay.
So we'll probably get them next week,
But interviews happen already?
interviews will be starting the end of next week,
Yeah.
middle of next week, and the following week, and then they'll make the appointments the first of.
You know, when the list of applicants is public?
That's what I was
We
just
don't know
saying.
yet.
The
It'll take them a little while. but
Will it be
yeah.
after the interviews or before the interviews?
Usually it's before.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, applications just closed on Sunday.
Sunday, so this week sometime, hopefully they will.
Probably
Well,
next,
this week,
probably
yeah.
early next week would be my guess once the staff. gets-
Excited to see how many people are on for the one seat on planning board.
We promise to share as soon as we get.
Oh, thank you.
So the work plan, I think this SRO or dorms or whatever we want to call it,
Micro units.
we can come up with names, days on end, and then after we come up with names, new people will come up with names, but finding a way basically to build denser housing and existing infrastructure that doesn't support, I guess, a traditional unit with a bathroom for every bed. I think that could be helpful, I think, for so many different areas that we've looked at. Could be helpful for the homeless community, could be helpful for people with disabilities, low-income people. And it sounds like there is sort of a zoning building code element to that maybe we can study in more depth and eventually make a recommendation on. I don't have the answer to this issue,
Some
but
big financing considerations too, related to especially SROs.
Like to be able to get it to pencil out.
Yeah, you can't finances arose with LIHTC.
Oh, okay.
And there's jurisdictions have minimum size requirements, although that's something I
As
suppose
in
we
like
could look at,
livability
yeah.
standards? National.
You have to meet certain livability standards, but when we looked at it many years ago, we didn't identify any significant barriers in city's code.
But I think it's worth chatting about for sure.
It's just more, I mean, some cities have done it really well, like San Francisco and Portland have.
That's what I was gonna say.
But
There's-
they're also mostly high end.
Yeah.
So highly amenitized rooftop space, rooftop bar.
In September, I was in Tel Aviv and I stayed in a like micro hotel situation, pod hotel. That was in like a big office building. Like you rode up an elevator with like office people to a certain floor and you walked in. And it was actually like beautiful inside. Like it was very well designed. And then there's almost like little sheds for each room. And then there was a common bathroom area. And I don't know. I think I hear you on like, you're not getting all the same government money to build that as like affordable housing, LIHTC, but I think there could be free market demand in Boulder for visitors, hotel types, and then also you sort of fill the gap with that if, you know, there are people, I don't know, like building that stock could be helpful for a lot of different people. And I was surprised the crowd staying there, you had 20, 30-year-old tourist types, but it was actually a pretty diverse crowd.
Excuse me, Jay, when that was looked at years ago, is there anything like right around here that exists like that? I've been
can't think of any,
searching and I'm like,
There was
not
one
finding it.
that I thought was entitled on East Pearl, but I don't know that it ever got built. Just like a year or two ago.
So they had micro units on Pearl. Wasn't that far east.
Not east, like
But it
22nd,
was
23rd, something like that.
Literally micro units, so
But-
each unit was complete.
Are
Okay.
you thinking about that olive?
No,
No.
no, this was tiny, they were like. I don't
Barely
know,
any parking, yeah.
100.
Super high end.
Yeah, super
That
high
was
end,
the
super
thing,
high end.
super
But I
high
think, yeah, it's gonna have to be that.
I don't know.
I think it's worth a
So,
conversation.
Yeah, I mean, so it's
Yeah.
on the list.
Yeah.
Karin, your name's next to it.
I know, and I got a little stopped when I was searching for something around here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even mean Boulder, I mean like the metro area, trying to see if there was.
It's very like
Something that you
un-American.
get
I mean, they have it in like New York and San Francisco, but
That's a
like
little far.
for the rest of America, it's like an un-American concept, but Boulder's kind of like a non-traditional city in a lot of ways, in that like we have a lot of open space we're preserving. People want to be downtown, and I think there's the demand for that, and people would make those creature comfort sacrifices. I mean, I think we all make some creature comfort sacrifices just to live in Boulder. I know, like, if I didn't live in Boulder, I'd probably have way more space and probably more than one bedroom. I think we all can relate to that. And I don't know, I just think like if there was a place on Pearl Street where you could have a private bed that was nice, people pay $90, $100 a night for that. I bet. And then
That's a hotel.
correct, but then you could also format it. A monthly rate would be much cheaper than $3,000 a month or something like that.
So what comes close is the student housing where they've got like 6-bedroom units. And there's a bedroom and bath, and then the common living room, they're rented by the bedroom, they're not rented by the apartment. So that model is
But it's gotta
kind of-
have a bath, yeah.
It doesn't have to have a bath. That's how it's because it's luxury.
Okay.
It's luxury
Got it.
student
Okay.
housing, so they wouldn't be able to rent them.
So
And the
what I'm
prices-
proposing, I don't think we have to hash out this idea tonight, but when we did this last session on the office conversions, I felt like most of that conversation had to do with like turning offices into like traditional apartments. And I think the feedback we got is like, it's very difficult to do that. But then we were like very intrigued by the Bridge House concept. And I think this is like a good narrowing, is we should sort of focus on the SRO dorm, you know, an alternate style than a traditional apartment, and see what is it that the city can do to make that type of housing more accessible. Because if we can put beds in these empty office buildings, I mean, like I've lived in Boulder for 11 years and that Whole Foods across from the law school is still empty. That's prime real estate. I just find that shocking. Alfalfa is still, do they put in a medical clinic there or something? I don't, it's just like, we have such a crunch on housing, and there's like all these empty commercial spaces in prime locations. Like there's gotta be a solution that can work. So yeah, the traditional apartment model, not necessarily workable, but maybe some SRO. I think that's what we heard from our guests. So maybe we dedicate a session on that in the near future.
Anything else?
We're gonna do a little thing on Elevate Boulder next month. Which I think will just be short, but I think you'll find it interesting. And then the comp plan is sort of the next big item for HAP in March. So that public review draft will be released early March. So you'll have time to review it beforehand, but this is going to be your first big opportunity. I don't know, did anyone watch the council retreat? No. Well, we got away with not having a council priority on housing for the first time in a decade. We'd like to attribute it to the fact that council sees that we're already doing really good work. But we also promised to come in August 5th to talk more about housing. So something might come out of that as well.
You mean March? Did you mean March 5th?
Yes.
August.
I said August.
That's
Rushing
of the year.
Karin, if we're doing an SRO on the agenda, they said that there's apparently a whole portion of the code on boarding houses. I would be happy to look into that and give a little report on that and see maybe are there existing laws that just need to be updated, or, you know, I can certainly.
Yeah, that'd be great. Okay. And I also think this is a really good time for council to hear some of these kind of off the beaten path options, because this is when they can get inserted into the BVCP, right? Is if there's other thinking that, I mean, it starts at the big scale and then it trickles down to zoning and whatever codes. And I'm not sure how robust BVCP is right now in housing for alternative populations, either senior housing or, you know, do we have precise language in BVCP on?
You will see very shortly.
I mean, historically.
So it does not call out every single population. It's the language is more generic, because remember we're trying to get from several thousand words to.
I was going to ask you to do research on the fair housing implications of identifying special populations, right?
In our big vision.
Yeah. But I'm sure you've got that covered already.
Yeah, I mean, the policies aren't going to change that dramatically, really.
Is it possible in the BVCP to create language that would facilitate certain kinds of developments that support our values and vision to be by right?
Absolutely.
That I think is the cleanest path. Because that all of a sudden
Without
gives
specifying
huge
which
economic
ones.
incentive to these kinds of things, huge, I mean, I think, Brian was right on.
Absolutely.
So I'll be looking for that. How can we get that language in? No, I know. But I mean, it just seems like it's.
But it's also a question
simple
of
and
what is,
straightforward.
does the community all agree on what is the most important?
Well, that comes in the details, which is down here, but at least the starting language because right now we know we're not getting what we want. The community is outraged about all kinds of things insofar as, look what's getting built, look what's getting built. And
So challenge that a little bit.
the vast majority of
What
what's getting built.
values are you bringing
Exactly.
to that conversation?
Exactly.
And are they shared by everybody,
Exactly.
including the people that truly need it?
Well, we have, all the community input factors, identifying things, that kind of thing. It's a matter of then aligning our strategy to get there. Because we know we're kind of off base on some things right now. So interesting conversation, this Boulder Valley comp plan update.
Okay, anything else regarding the work plan?
Nope.
Michael, I guess we'll be drinking beer with you another time.
Yeah.
What's that?
I guess we'll be drinking beers with you another time.
Oh, yeah, that's fine. Don't worry about it.
When's your last meeting on the housing board?
Today.
Technically.
Well, this is
probably
your
tonight.
last one?
Well, I have 2 more months, but I have conflicts for the next 2 months.
Okay. Bummer.
Yeah, I mean, one of them is going to Mexico, so sorry.
We'll just join you in Mexico.
Come on down.
Any other matters from the staff? It's the March 5th.
I don't think so. Any questions?
Think so. Anything else from anybody? Well, then I'll make a motion to adjourn. Great, all in favor? Opposed? Great, all right, good night, everybody. Good night, Bill. Philip.
Feel better, Philip?
Feel better.
Phil.